All right. Welcome to September 21, 2021. That's pretty good, 21. No. I had to be serious for Brian's thing. Calling this meeting of the Yuba City Council order. The governor has declared a state of emergency to exist in California as a result of the threat of COVID-19, aka the coronavirus, while the governor recently issued Executive Order N-07-21, which lifted certain orders and associated restrictions. There are still public health directives in place. Executive Order N-08-21 also allows local legislative bodies to continue to hold meetings via conference calls while still meeting state transparency requirements. The public's health and well-being are at top priority for the city of Yuba City, and you're urged to take all appropriate health and safety precautions. How to participate in this virtual meeting. The meeting is utilizing Zoom application for this live broadcast. For this meeting, we'll be using the question and answers functionality of this tool in order to accommodate public comment on your device. The question and answer section of the app is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. For those that would like to comment during this meeting, please enter your comment into the question and answers portion of the app and be sure to state the item you will be commenting on. During the public comment of each item, staff will read aloud the comments provided by the public for all to hear for that specific item. May I have roll call, please?
Mayor Boomgarden.
I'm here.
Vice Mayor Shaw.
Here.
Councilmember Espandola. Here. Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Kirchner.
Here. All right. Closed session items, I will defer to our very well-respected city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 5 items for closed session. Item A is conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. Agency designated representatives are Dave Vaughn, City Manager, Brad McIntyre, Community Services Director, Michael Jarvis, LCW, and the employee organizations or police sergeants. Item B for closed session is starts at public services or facilities pursuant to Government Code Section 545.957A, consultation with the city attorney and or Yuba City Fire Chief, Police Chief, Director of Public Works, IT Manager, and City Manager. Item C for closed session is public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, position City Attorney. Item D is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 of the Government Code Section 54957.9D1 case. Existing facts and circumstance for closed session consist of receipt of a written threat of litigation by Matthew Rexroad on August 1st, 2021 to the city clerk. The letter is available for public inspection. And finally, item E, conference with legal counsel pending litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2, Gross versus City of Yuba City et al. Claim number is stated. Claims regarding an arrest incident on 4/12/20 resulting in lead damages or injury. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from the public? None in the chambers.
No public comment.
No public comments. All right, we'll adjourn to closed session. And away we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of September 21, 2021, Yuba City Council. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. The governor has declared a state of emergency to exist in California as a result of the threat of the coronavirus, COVID-19. While the governor recently issued Executive Order N-07-21, which lifted certain orders and associated restrictions, there are still public health directives in place. Executive Order N-08-21 also allows local legislative bodies to continue to hold meetings via conference calls while still meeting state transparency requirements. The public's health and well-being are the top priority for the city of Yuba City, and you are urged to take all appropriate health and safety precautions. How can you participate in this virtual meeting? This meeting is utilizing the Zoom application for this live broadcast. For this meeting, we will be using the questions and answers functionality of this tool in order to accommodate public comment. On your device, the question and answer section of the app is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. For those that would like to comment during this meeting, please enter your comment into the question and answers portion of the app and be sure to state the item you will be commenting on. During the public comment of each item, staff will read aloud the comments provided by the public for all to hear for that specific item. Please be timely with your questions, as once the public hearing is closed or the item has been discussed by the council and voted on, no more comments will be accepted for that item. May I have roll call, please?
Mayor Boomgarden.
Here.
Vice Mayor Shaw.
Here.
Councilmember Espandola. Here. Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Kirchner.
Here.
All right, we are blessed to be have an audience today. Pastor Austin Schmidt of the Gray Avenue Christian Church, who will lead us in the invocation and inspiration at the end. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Would you join me in a word of prayer? Lord Jesus, thank you so much for this evening, God, where we can come and we can discuss matters regarding our city. God, we thank you for the city that we live in. And Lord, these past couple of years, we've experienced a lot. And Lord, we just pray that you would impart your wisdom upon each and every leader in the city. God, we just ask that your spirit would fall afresh on each and every leader. God, that you would direct them in the decisions that they make, and God, that it would ultimately be your will. Lord, we thank you that you ultimately are in charge, and God, we look to you for our answers. So Lord, we pray that you would be glorified in this meeting. God, we want to stay out of your way. Whatever you want to do, God, we pray that you would just rule and reign over it, God. So we just commit our city to you, our leaders, the people who call Yuba City home. And Lord, we just thank you for all that you have in store for the years to come. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Sergeant Cooper, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Schmidt. Agenda modifications and approval of the agenda. Are there any agenda modifications? Hearing none. Just announcing that we will be holding at our next council meeting, regular city council meeting on October 5th, 2021, we will be hearing a presentation on the issue of cannabis cultivation and dispensing within Yuba City. Ceremonial, let me back up. City Attorney's report on closed session items as well, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was no reportable action taken in closed session.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Ceremonial presentations. We are going to recognize Sergeant Kevin Cooper on his retirement. So if you could join the rest of the council up here, that would be great. Very pleased to be representing the rest of the city council and reading these words about your career with us. Please welcome Police Sergeant Kevin James Cooper, Super Officer here for the Yuba City Police Department. He's a good golfer too. Whereas Sergeant Kevin Cooper nobly served his country as a member of the United States Air Force for 10 years, receiving his honorable discharge in May of 1995. Kevin was hired as a police officer by the City of Yuba City on June 24, 2001. He successfully completed and was selected to the positions of Field Training Officer, Cadet Advisor, Defensive Tactics Advisor, Honor Guard Member, Peer Support Member, and Traffic Officer. Kevin was one of the instrumental officers in the renovation and rejuvenation of the chaplaincy and the Honor Guard program. He was recognized in 2014 for his outstanding devotion to the mission of the department and the welfare of its staff with the Department Spirit Award. Kevin tested for and earned the position of police sergeant in January of 2019, a day I remember very well, being recognized for his leadership abilities and outstanding devotion to duty. Sergeant Kevin Cooper took an oath when he was hired to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, an oath he never broke, and he kept faith with the public he so honorably served for more than 35 years of public and military service. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that I am Mark Boomgarden, Mayor of the City of Yuba City, on behalf of the entire City Council and the citizens that we all serve, do hereby congratulate Sergeant Kevin Cooper on the occasion of his honorable retirement, September 24, 2021. We wish Kevin the very, very best in the future.
I don't even know if I need this. Well, wow again. I've had an honor and a privilege to serve alongside men and women of the Yuba City Police Department, as well as members of this community. And it has been a joy and it's been an honor to do that. I've learned so much from my fellow officers, so much from the citizens of Yuba City. And it's been a wonderful journey. I thank you all for this honor. And it's an incredible honor to be honored by the people you serve. That means you did a job. Thank you all for that. Thank you very much.
All right. Move on to item number 2, which is the Yuba Sutter Food Bank presentation. This is going to be presented by Michelle Downing, the Chief Executive Officer of the Yuba Sutter Food Bank. Welcome.
I'm sorry that they ran out. A couple of our officers actually volunteered for us, so. Right. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Michelle Downing. I'm the CEO for the Yuba Sutter Food Bank. Thank you for this opportunity to present a snapshot of what the 17 months has looked like at the food bank. I joined the organization in April of last year in the midst of a leadership change and the unexpected wrath of COVID-19. Yeah, probably not the best time to join a food bank or lead one at that. But based on the results, the food bank team performed remarkably well considering the challenges. I report to 12 of the most dedicated, committed, and supportive men and women who volunteer their time and expertise. They are passionate about fighting the food insecurity in our community and are instrumental in the success of the food bank leading that fight. Together, we navigate the transition from a volunteer-ran organization to a staff-ran organization. The food bank now has 6 full-time and 3 part-time employees. We have built community partnerships, developed and implemented processes for reaching more people in need, and decreased food waste within the food bank. The food bank is a food storage and distribution depot for over 35 partnered agencies who are smaller frontline agencies that get the food out directly to the community or the people in need. We receive and safely store donated foods and grocery products from manufacturers, retailers, shippers, packers, growers, government agencies. We then distribute the food and grocery items through our partnered agencies and through meal programs that serve children, seniors, individuals at risk for hunger. Last year, the food bank distributed over 2.3 million pounds of food to Yuba Sutter community. This was the most amount of food that the food bank has ever distributed to our community. Last year, our community was in crisis, and like so many others, the food bank responded to COVID-19. The pandemic changed every aspect of our work. It presented new challenges nearly every day with the increased need of food assistance and how to help vulnerable and even quarantined households. We set up drive-through distributions, which became a vital part of our response efforts for the safety and efficiency of our staff, volunteers, and the recipients. We improved and implemented new programs to reach and help more people in need by adding 9 additional food distribution locations in addition to several pop-up food giveaways. We developed a food delivery program for the vulnerable population, and we increased and strengthened relationships with our partnered agencies by collaborating and assisting them in their efforts. The unyielding support from Rotary, Kiwanis, Adventist Rite Out, LDS missionaries, Beale Air Force Base can sum up, and from so many others, can sum up the measurement of our impact. Those who gave of their time, talents, and treasures supported our efforts in facilitating the most amount of food we have ever delivered to our community, which resulted in over 140,000 visits to all of our food giveaways. This is about a 45% increase from 2019. The food bank assisted the Office of Emergency Services, for both counties, and the COVID-19 task force by providing food to the population that was most vulnerable to COVID. As the stay-at-home order was lifted and the community began to reopen, OES and the task force began preparations to deactivate their call centers. We worked with both organizations and establishments and established an internal process for people, process for people to call into the food bank directly for their assistance. Since then, we developed the Homebound program into what it is today. Because of our partnership with Yuba and Sutter County, we deliver 2 home-cooked meals and a box of groceries to low-income seniors. We coordinate with local restaurants and catering services to prepare the meals using the food from our food rescue program. The program nourishes low-income seniors, and meals are provided to low-income in-home service clients, adult protective service clients, homeless seniors transitioning from the street to motels, and hospital patients that are being discharged. The money received for this program is kept local. It has provided an opportunity for restaurants to recoup some of the financial loss incurred by COVID. When it comes to healthy food, we believe it should be eaten and not wasted. Food waste stems from confusion over date labeling, resulting in a lot of food being thrown away, which is still safe for consumption beyond the label date. Through information provided by Feeding America, USDA, and FDA, we know that the food past its best use date is still wholesome and nutritious and safe to eat. These dates are simply a manufacturer's best guess on the item's freshness, which is oftentimes very conservative. Through our partnership with Feeding America, we secured donations, next slide please. We secured donations from over 10 local major grocery store retailers in Yuba and Sutter County, who donate their excess perishables and non-perishable items to families in need. When stores have slightly damaged products or food nearing the expiration, they pull it from their shelves, and instead of disposing of it, they donate it to us. We pick up Monday through Friday, collecting on an average of 80,000 pounds of food a month, which is then distributed to our community through our monthly community well-being food distributions, our partnered agencies who support access to Yuba and Sutter County, the restaurants who prepare the meals for our homebound delivery program, 14 Forward, Better Way, the homeless resource officers who have expressed that having items in their patrol cars to offer the homeless people or person makes having those conversations easier. As the largest food recovery organization in Yuba and Sutter County, our food rescue program reduces food waste and provides more meals to our community. Meals are just part of the story. The food redirected to neighbors' tables through the program has a positive environmental impact because we are getting food out faster to the community, and through our partnered agencies who support food access, we have seen a decrease internally in food waste by 50% compared to 2019. But we can always do better. Improving and expanding our recovery efforts will require new resources, like investing in solar to decrease the cost of electricity, adding additional cold storage for storing donations, adding more trucks to our fleet so we can do more large-scale food recovery, building the capacity of our community partners so they're able to distribute more food, and adding more volunteers' labor to help us sort and distribute the food. I believe the need within our community is not going away anytime soon. Hungry adults, children, and seniors rely on the food bank for their next meal and for healthier food choices. We hear their stories about not having enough food to feed their children, not being able to provide healthier food options, and disabled seniors having to choose to buy medication over food. There is still much work to be done, and we can only do it through the continued support of grants and donations. I hope you guys have a better understanding, and gals, I hope you have a better understanding of the work that we do and the vital part and the role that we have within the community. And I want to personally invite each of you to come out and get a personal tour of the food bank. I think it speaks volumes when you actually see, and I think Dave can attest to that, is when you actually see the operation and what we do, it's pretty amazing. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And sorry, questions?
Hold on.
I always forget that part.
We'll get you. Hold on. Council, any comments or questions for Michelle?
Through the mayor.
Please.
Michelle, first of all, thank you for the incredible job you guys are doing. And we partnered with you right after you came on board, and
Absolutely did. Thank you.
you guys have done a remarkable job during COVID. The question I have is, like, with a normal year, do you see a spike as far as need coming up with the holidays that the community needs to get behind you? Because the holidays are a time that we hear a lot of things with people with mental crisis because of the holidays and triggering memories, but we also know there's many that need food. Are you seeing that you need an increase as we go through the holidays, or is it still on that same curve that you've been? Can you tell us what your upcoming needs are over the next 3 months?
Well, we're always in need for shelf-stable items, especially during the holidays. So a lot of our partnered agencies, they do provide gift baskets and things to those that are in need. And so being able to stock our shelves to help our partnered agencies meet that need, it's always a need.
And by specifics, the shelf things, examples of what the specifics you need if people want to donate items versus money?
Sure. Well, money is always the best option because we can get more food for the dollar versus, someone just coming in and bringing in 5 cans of, peanut butter or whatnot. We'd still love that. But putting the money to best use is buying in bulk and pallets of items that we can get through our partnered agencies, like bigger food banks like Contra Costa, Feeding America, rather than just going to the retail stores.
And the last question, because mine's all centered around the upcoming holidays.
Sure.
To have that impact that you need to take care of our community, what's a realistic time frame of when you would need contributions to the food bank so that you can have the inventory to disperse it out to
You
the...
can start now, yeah.
But you need them by Thanksgiving, you need them by November 1?
Actually, it's probably around, in all seriousness, September, October to start preparing and, for November and December.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
To the mayor? Yes. Thank you for that presentation. I got a firsthand example of how great your organization is. About 6 months ago, there was a semi that ended up in a ditch over there on Riego Road, and Virgil from Just Serve put the call out, and it was towed over here to the yard on Garden Highway, and it was fascinating to watch all the assets that you had show up, and the small army of people that were there, and saved all. And it was quite a bit. It was quite a bit of meeting there, and it went to a good cause. So thank you very much.
Yes, I was back in that truck with you, shucking boxes.
I thought you looked familiar.
Yeah. So what he speaks of is we often, not often, but we sometimes get big semis that were in an accident, and so the insurance company prefers the items to be donated. And we were a recipient of a large load that was coming from or going to Costco and Safeway and Trader Joe's. So we got a lot of nice items that we wouldn't have normally had to be able to offer to the community.
Thank you for that presentation, and I will have to set up a date with you.
Yes.
To get together. What are the top ask of community of food, that you're always like, oh, do we give out, corn, peanut butter, what is it that your top, need for food?
Our pantries seem to like the peanut butter, pop top type things. Your soups that have pop top, easier to those that are on the streets that they help. Tuna, all the vegetables. Pretty much a lot of non-perishable items. There are a few pantries that have refrigeration in their pantries that they can hold, some of the colder fresh produce items. But a lot of them are pretty much non-perishable items.
It's really interesting, the food delivery system that you set up with restaurants and getting food to people. Can you explain a little how, not too much into the details of it, but how did, because people were suggesting that, in the height of all the concerns, right? And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, the food bank's doing this, because people were asking, where do I get this? And wouldn't it be a great partnership to help restaurants when they were closed, to continue to hopefully, survive during that time? Do you want to share a little bit how that worked?
How it started?
Yeah.
Well, it started with COVID and being able to meet people that, basically the vulnerable population, those that we were asking to stay in versus go out. And we were just delivering like bags of grocery items. And then we kind of elevated it and through grant funding, partnering with local restaurants. And they come into the food bank or send us an ingredient list and we pull the items for them. So the restaurants are shopping and they're preparing the food that we recover. And they package it up in a container where the recipient can either refrigerate it, freeze it, and then microwave it.
That's awesome. And how often are you doing that?
Yuba County, it's twice, it's every Tuesday.
Okay.
And Sutter County, it is 2 times a month, the first and the third Thursday of the month.
Very well done. I mean, I can't even say what a need, and the aspect of you starting in the middle of that, eye of the storm of COVID. It's just a testament to your leadership, to your ability to pull all this together. And with your board members, I think there's someone maybe in the room that is one, but but you have a fantastic board as well to help you navigate with all this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Michelle, we do eat 600 turkeys, remember, for So You Can.
Oh, yeah.
Just want to throw that out, sorry. There you go.
Got one.
600 turkeys.
$5.99. Anything? Okay. Michelle, thank you so much. I think just watching what's happened over the last 17 months or so and the changes and the positive things that have happened and the leveraging and the plussing of all the relationships. I know there's a lot of folks trying to do a lot of things, but it comes top of mind. I think the food bank is definitely standing alone out there, knowing that this is a stable solid organization led with solid people like yourself and your board that are contributing to the community. So thank you for the presentation. I like that councilwomen are probably going to need to step up and take a visit down there.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful community resource.
Yeah,
It really is.
I truly believe
Not
that.
because I'm leading it, it is an absolute wonderful community
It's
resource.
okay to pat yourself on the back. All right. Thank you so much for being here this evening. All right, next up, emergency preparedness update. This will be presented by our fire chief, Mr. Jesse Alexander.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. September is National Preparedness Month, and so we kind of felt that that was fitting to give a presentation on where we stand with emergency preparedness for Yuba City, which we have a 6-step plan in place to work on for emergency management. That would include our emergency notification system, training, evacuation zones, our department operations centers and emergency operations center, testing the system, and developing our emergency operations plans. These don't need to go in sequential order, but we've been working on components of each one of these and wanted to briefly cover with you what accomplishments on each one of those categories that we've done over the last 16 months. So I'll start with our emergency notification system, which is Code Red. And that is our primary way and probably our most effective way of reaching out to the community in regards to an emergency that's out there. So last summer, our dispatchers worked with Code Red to get proper training on how to build immediate notifications, how to build pre-built messages, how to create the maps, all the training associated with that. And then we started a marketing campaign associated with that, where we performed a citywide test last September as part of National Emergency Preparedness Month. Paper, radio, television, social media, website, and pamphlets that have been distributed and utility bills and are also at local businesses, encouraging people to sign up for Code Red. You've probably heard me talk before about in the fire service, we're in the time business because of how fast fire progresses and how quickly we have to get there. This is even more important so on disasters, because you're not only fighting the time associated with the disaster, but you're fighting the component of getting the right information out as quickly as possible. Because if you're not getting that information out fast, there's going to be misinformation or incorrect information that will hinder the operation. So it's important to get those messages out fast through Code Red. Since we started this process back in September 1st, our registered phone count in Yuba City was 9,500 in registered phone numbers. Since this marketing campaign pulled those numbers in August 5th, we're at 18,764. So that's a 216% increase in our registered individuals with Code Red within the city. And those are registered phone numbers. But Code Red's not the only mechanism that we use for our notification. We do have a social media team that's active on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter that helps try to get those messages out. Recently, we've started TED Talk style videos to let people know what we've done and encourage other components of building Go kits, emergency preparedness kits, those type of components. One part that I'm personally very happy about is the fire department's website on emergency notification. It's very user-friendly, and there is an enormous amount of information, and encourage everyone to go there. So it's just not a spot where you can sign up and learn about the fire department or Code Red, but the amount of emergency notification stuff from preparing kits, evacuation plans, power outages, and there's a lot of information on there for small business owners too. We always have, in the fire service, you're always wanting a backup plan. And so same thing with emergency notification system. And what we internally use is WhatsApp. And so recently used that on some of the fire, especially up on the call door, where internet and phone service is not necessarily reliable during an emergency. We've seen that from disasters. So we've created groups in the city to be able to communicate back and forth when we have poor cell reception. We have one set up for our Department Operations Center. We have one established for our executive team, our fire management team, and our fire operations. In addition, we've also created a OneDrive. It's basically, think of it as a electronic filing cabinet where we store all of our emergency management documents in there. So that if we have our plan to open up our EOC at Station 4, in the event that something happens and we're not able to get to those binders, those books, we always have everything available to us as long as we have access to internet and a computer to access these documents. The next part is training. So we've established a tracking mechanism in the city to track where everybody is in regards to their mandatory training. We have a citywide basic training plan for everybody that requires them to get all of their NIMS and ICS training done. And all the workers for the Yuba City are registered disaster service workers, and they complete the yearly training on that, which they've done. In addition to that, we've had formal classes, especially with Incident Management 300, which is for an expanding disaster. So all the executive staff and some of the mid-managers participated in that. And then in addition to that, we had some very basic Emergency Operations Center training tied to that. We've also identified roles, responsibilities, and checklists for all the key positions. We've gathered all of those documents and put those in electronic form on that OneDrive, but we've also created the hard binders, the copies that we have in those key locations. And then in addition to that, all the EOC command and general staff have met one-on-one to go over those roles, responsibilities, and checklists, so they've had that hands-on training. We've created a public information officer team, basically, and it's comprised of 4 personnel that have attended a PIO training with Incident Management Team 4, which I kind of feel like that's the premier in regards to public information officers. And so they came back, brought some great stuff, and created this team. Since then, they've established press releases, they've done television news interviews, public service announcements, and at least one has gone out and developed and expanded their skills on mutual aid incidents. And that one individual has actually performed in part of the operations briefing for one of the Dixie Fire incidents, which is a big deal, big deal. So based upon previous disasters and trying to look at best practices, we've also modified our evacuation zones. So we've created 35 micro or mini evacuation zones throughout the city. What this allows us to do is to be more surgical in our evacuation process, and the fact that we can identify and evacuate a single neighborhood, or we can expand that out into a larger area in a systematic, more calculated way to be more efficient and effective. So this is not just a flood evacuation zone. This is I would consider an all-risk evacuation zone map that allows us to evacuate and contemplate for things like hazardous materials incident, active shooters, things along those lines. It's also, I like to reference it as a way to use as a quick search grid for missing children, things along those lines. And thought processes that went in their place was exactly for that. Isolating high-risk areas, looking at wind directions or normal flow patterns, so for those areas so that we could quickly evacuate. We also identified 4 community relocation centers throughout the city that allows us to relocate a small portion of people in a very timely fashion without the need to establish a full shelter. So if you need to move somebody for a natural gas leak for just a quick hour, you can get them to an open site. We've developed the plans for their first responders to be able to implement these evacuations. And then we're currently in the process for each one of those zones building a pre-built message for one of the 3 types of evacuations you could receive, which is an evacuation warning, evacuation order, and a shelter-in-place notice. Because the reality is when a disaster happens, the 911 system is going to blow up. That's just the reality. Everybody's going to be calling. And this way, if we have these pre-built messages and we say, hey, we want a shelter in place to a hazardous materials incident for everybody in 2E, our dispatch center has that pre-built already done. They're not having to record messages or type out anything. It's pre-done and sent out. So that will hopefully help dispatch center in trying to get out that timely information as quickly as possible. We've also worked on our Department Operations Center and our Emergency Operations Center. And so we've done a simulated Department Operation drill for a wind event. We've also been running a DOC during the entire period of the pandemic, at which point for every single one of the operational periods, we've developed situation reports to determine what action items we need to address and make sure that we're hitting all those essential service functions within the city. We've worked on our emergency operations centers where we've redesigned our entire organizational chart for the EOC to be kind of more consistent with best practices out there. And we've identified the responsibilities for each one of those positions at least 2 deep. So that we're not relying on just one individual that might be on vacation in Hawaii to fill the logistics role. We've built some depth in there. We've also gone out and identified individuals that might be outside of the community that hold special skill sets and plug those in so that we can pull from other incident management teams if they're available, or people that just have a lot of experience in an EOC. And we've taken all that information and put it on that electronic OneDrive so that we can access that anywhere. Next is testing the system. So that's what National Preparedness Month is. You go through it, you test the system. We do a yearly code red test. We have another one that will occur September 30th at 1 p.m. for all the residents of Yuba City. We also work when testing the system on non-emergency events, so event planning. So a good example would be the Sikh Parade. Working through those, developing incident action plans, working with our partners on planning those events. We do it on possible weather events and then tabletop exercises. And then you have the actual emergency events themselves where you test the system, i.e. with the pandemic, of what we've been doing. And then you have finally your emergency operations plans. So during the pandemic, each department created a continuity of operations plan. We've been working with the county to develop a local hazard mitigation plan, which is finalized. And then we've been working on the policy development so that we know when there's a power outage in the city, what percentage of the city and how long before we open a DOC and how long before we open an EOC. But with that being said, we still have a lot of work to do. And these are still the things that need to be accomplished. So we need to finish doing these pre-built messages on evacuation zones. I'd like to upgrade our AM 1500 radio station that the mayor implemented when he was the fire chief. It allows us to be able to reach out and communicate on a wide scale, a good timely message that we're able to voice, especially when people are in a vehicle leaving during an emergency. Having that radio broadcast is key. Performing a DOC full-scale exercise, performing an EOC facilitated exercise, like to host a town hall meeting on emergency preparedness. And then our emergency operation plan, which is that large comprehensive plan that the city has for everything. Some of them can be very basic and some can be very in-depth. And I'm kind of an in-depth type of guy, and they take a little bit of a while to write. They're a 6 to 8 month process. And so either using a consultant or writing it over the winter is the goal, is to start that process. And then currently the county is working on a countywide flood plan with a consultant to develop some protocols for that. That being said, are there any questions?
Council.
Through the mayor?
Yes.
Thanks, Chief. I like the town hall idea, by the way. I like that. So I'm looking at the evacuation zone map, specifically a flood emergency, we'll say a break on this side of the levee, depending on where the break is. Would the call-out system specify each zone which avenue to take to get out of town?
So this was designed as an all risk. So if we have the time and we know the situation where we want people to go and drive time, we can add that into the quick message on the bottom. So it allows dispatch to modify the pre-built message if we have where we want to go. Ideally, we want to get out in front, especially on evacuating an entire city. That's very challenging to evacuate an entire city. Road systems are just usually not developed to be able to handle that type of load. So trying to stagger a system out. So using your example on this one, like it'd be ideal if we could go, hey, 5D, 5F, and 5H, you have a mandatory evacuation. 5E and 5G, you're at a warning, so that you stagger that process out and try to hopefully reduce the load on the roadways and then direct them in there to where you'd want to go. If it's going to be a flood situation, you're going to set up a full evacuation site. So we'd want to let them know which evacuation site, whether it's obviously wouldn't be our fairgrounds in that scenario, but either heading out or heading up all across the bridge to make sure that they're in a full evacuation site.
Anybody else? Chief, thank you. I know this has been something that has been a very high priority for you, despite your call-outs all over the state to support. I like the fact that it's all risk. I think that's incredibly important because our community, with its 99-20 access and airport, and I mean, we can go down the list of the different things that could cause us some grief here in Yuba City. My biggest concern is going to continue to be, as long as I have the privilege and the honor to sit up here, is to find you stable funding. for emergency preparedness activities. What happens typically, and we've seen this in this city time and time again, is we have an incident, we get all jazzed up, we fund stuff, and then we get complacent again. And this is no knock on anybody. It's just kind of the life cycle of emergency preparedness. Yeah, and the law of catastrophic reform. And, until a catastrophe happens, people just don't keep this top of mind. So I honor the work that you're doing. I know the police department is engaged as well. I know your county partners, and I'll be talking about them in my comments afterwards and the challenges they're facing. I know they're sitting at the table as well. I just continue to not challenge you, but encourage and support you in trying to make sure that we keep this as top of mind as possible. You never know when it's going to happen, and exercise. Anybody else?
Through the mayor, I just want to acknowledge the amount of work that you and your team have done in the last, 16, 19 months? I don't want to get it wrong.
About 16 months.
16 months, because I know you're very precise, Chief, so 16 months. And increasing the code red, I know that's, I think I've signed up twice. So I'm somewhere in that system twice, and I lost my password. We don't need to talk about it, but I need help. I'm sure other people probably messed up their code red passwords on the system.
But just for your knowledge, it doesn't count duplicate numbers. So those numbers I gave you are those registered numbers for individuals. So that has been a question that's brought up. So what about if a person's registered 2 or 3, 4 times? Does that, increase the count? And the answer to that is no.
Okay, good to know, but I'm going to need some help with that.
Okay.
But impressive, and echo what the mayor said, and the idea of doing the town hall, excellent idea, and I would love for us to branch out and bring in people that are normally not in those conversations, which you are very supportive of that. So look forward to working with you on the next things that we're going to do together, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
If I can just echo what you said. First of all, Chief, great job. Second part is any of us that has served as a first responder or served in the military, you hit on it up there, and that is real life exercises, tabletop exercises. It's great to have those books, but if they got 2 inches of dust on them, when the disaster hits, we're scrambling, and it needs to be instinct. So I really look forward to those, and I appreciate the initiative that you've taken on this. Thank you.
Through the mayor,
Yes.
may I take the unusual step of actually offering a comment on this item?
Absolutely.
As you know, we represent a lot of cities and helped out a lot of cities during COVID, and we've seen a lot of emergency responses, a lot of mediocre emergency responses, and worse. The one city out of the entire state that we've been helping out on the various cities that stood out as the gold standard was Yuba City. They had the best response, they had the best plans, they had the best staff, and they did the most exemplary job out of all of them. And they helped provide example to the other cities and were there to help consult with them as they were going through this process. And I just wanted to recognize Yuba City's unique position in that regard. So thank you.
Very good to know. Thanks for sharing that. All right, we're going to move to item number 4, public communications, the appearance of interested citizens. Due to COVID-19, residents are encouraged to attend city council meetings via the web or submit comments by email. Consistent with public health guidelines for social distancing, limited seating is available in the council chambers. If an attendee does not have facial covering, one will be provided. Comments may be made either at the council chamber podium. Please participate via web conference or email if you are ill or have been exposed to COVID-19. I do not have any speaker cards. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak? Dave Vaughn does.
Mayor, members, is that on? It is. Mayor, members, council, it's my great opportunity to be able to present to you tonight and share with you the citywide cleanup that occurred, city-driven last Friday. We had 75 employees that worked between 8 and noon very diligently to collect a lot of material and make a dent and make our city a better quality of life. Some early numbers that come in, and these might shock you. Over a 4-hour period, this crew picked up just north of 92 tons of material. Included in that would be just south of 80 shopping carts, as well as countless numbers of areas that were covered. And it's with great respect that I bring this forward to you and acknowledge the employees of the city of Yuba City, as well as many of you for coming out and spending 4 hours making our city a better place. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and the staff, yourself, and the council, I think, all pitched in. A phenomenal effort. My understanding is we did such a good job, we might get another whack at it, so stand by for that. But, unintended consequences. Number one, I found some folks that needed some help, and we're able to provide them with that. Also, just connecting with the city staff. And I think that's always valuable, and I'm sure there was other team building things that were going on, but great effort. Thank you, sir, for bringing that, and thank you to the staff in the room. I think most everybody, if not everybody, was out there in the yellow vests, dodging traffic and picking up stuff, so great effort.
Through the mayor, I wore a different vest.
Yeah, you did. You were special. Anybody else in the audience like to speak? Anybody online?
No public comment.
Okay. Next, we'll move to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and can be enacted in one motion. There will not be any separate discussion of these items prior to the time that the council votes on the motion, unless members of the city council staff or the public request specific items to be discussed or removed from the consent calendar for individual action. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on any of these items? Okay. Anybody on the council who wish to remove any items?
Through the mayor.
Yes.
Move to approve consent.
Hold on. Anybody online?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, sir.
No problem. Move to approve consent items 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Vice Mayor Shaw, second by Councilwoman Espandola to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, consent calendar is approved unanimously. We'll move to item number 9. Park and facility naming policy. We have our community service director, Brad McIntyre, who will lead this in this discussion.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I guess I don't need to introduce myself.
You can.
Mayor. So this evening, I'm here. In the last few months, council seems to have requested a review of adopt a park and facility policy. So I'm here this evening asking council to consider that policy that establishes a criteria for the consideration of future parks and facilities. There is 2 maps I'm going to show you. I didn't want to, it was too hard to put all of our parks on one slide, so I just kind of broke it up. A couple things that I'd like to kind of point out, that this area here is the Tierra Buena area. And you see there are no parks. This will be our next topic of conversation here in a few minutes, but you will notice that in the Tierra Buena there are no parks. And as you can see, the other thing I kind of wanted to point out for future reference is that there is a park called Harder Park that is the county park, and that is right behind the museum. So we'll come back to that possibly a little bit later. So the parks that you can see before you have historically been named really in 2 or 3 different categories. And those categories have been practically through geography, street names, or individuals who have made significant contribution in our community. The proposal before you includes those with some additions that pretty much falls into 4 categories. We talked about the street that would be adjacent to the park that historically we've done. We've got geography and historical significance to the region. And then we've added individuals or organizations for your consideration. The criteria for individuals, you will see a lot of and/ors. Question that kind of came up earlier was, does it have to be all or none? So this just gives council the ability for flexibility through this policy. But the current proposal for naming a park after an individual is that they'd be deceased for the last 3 years prior to the park being named. They died in the line of duty or serving our community or the United States. Made extraordinary or lasting significant contributions to the city of Yuba City, the state of California, or the United States. In addition, it made significant donations or contributions to the city of Yuba City, resulting in acquisition of property, buildings, or specifically a new park. And/or an individual was a resident of the city of Yuba City for over 20 years. I'm almost done. Criteria also would include for an individual would be that had made exceptional contributions to the city, including one or more of the following: financial gifts, public service, or committed a long-term sponsorship agreement with the city. When we talk about organizations or giving them the opportunity to name a park, these would be organizations such as examples Rotary or Kiwanis. That'd be an organization that has made exceptional contributions to the city as well, including one or more of the following: financial gifts, public service, or a long-term sponsorship. There are exclusions in the policy that we think need to be considered. It would certainly be no names that would promote alcohol or tobacco products, a political organization. Also, under extraordinary circumstances, and this has happened in other cities, where a park had been named and then for some reason something had happened where it cast a negative image upon the city, and any city recognition could be revoked at the discretion of city council. Again, the recommendation would be to consider establishing a criteria and for the consideration of future naming city parks and/or facilities. I'd certainly gladly take any questions or comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Any questions or comments from the council? Anything from the public? Anything online?
No public comment.
Okay, bring it back to the council for possible action.
Through the mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution and policy that establishes criteria for the consideration of naming future city parks and facilities.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Vice Mayor Shaw, a second by Councilwoman Espandola. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, item 9 passes unanimously. We'll move on to item number 10, which is new park development on Harder Parkway, plans and specifications, and Mr. McIntyre will be presenting this as well.
2 in a row. Thank you. In the interest of improving our community's quality of life, I am requesting council to consider the approval of plans and specs and request to go out to bid for a potential new park based right off of Harder Parkway. This is Harder Park, going from north to south. This is a 5-acre park that includes a future connection to going west to the Sutter Buttes bike path. I will talk about amenities here in a little bit, but just the geography of it. I wanted to make sure that council understands that this is, I believe, one, it is in the Tierra Buena area, and I'll talk about that underserved area here in a little bit. But this park is certainly anticipated to be a regional destination. And it isn't your typical neighborhood park. It is 5 acres, which is a typical neighborhood park. However, there are 48 parking spots and a restroom located because we believe a lot of people will be coming in, and this will be their destination of getting onto bikes that they brought in and then heading back out on the bike path. Back in 2017, let me make sure, let me go forward one more. So back in 2017, Tierra Buena was designated as certainly an underserved area of our parks. There's, as I mentioned before in my last staff presentation, there was no parks in the Tierra Buena area. So in 2017, the Parks and Rec Commission went through 3 public meetings at Tierra Buena School. 2 of those meetings were committed to just identifying park amenities and locations for a future park someday. Then comes 2018, where we apply for a grant for $800,000. 2019, we get that grant, and it was a match for that. Since the award, we've hired Quadriga. It's a landscape architect and planning out of Sacramento. Some of the unique features, we'd like to try to have unique features in all of our parks. And so it's not just kind of a cookie cutter approach. But some of the certainly unique features that I'll be talking about will be the bicycle park, which features, let's see if this works still. No. The pump track, fitness area and challenge course, and the continuous walking perimeter path with solar lighting. There will be an area that's committed to a passive area that will have these following components in them as well. On that bottom left, you see that's a ping pong table, and on the right in the center bottom, that's a cornhole. They now make those that your next question is, how do those not walk off? The cornhole weighs about 200 to 300 pounds, and the ping pong table weighs about 500 to 600 pounds. One of the unique features, of course, staying with the theme of bicycling, is to create a pump track. The pump track in this design that we are proposing, now I want this to work. Is right in the middle is a cement pump track. And a pump track is exactly that, is that you gain momentum on your bike through pumping, not through pedaling. It gives the rider who are typically highly skilled in this to go off high ramps. It is a continuous circle. And this would be about one of about 3 in California. On the outside of the pump track, you see it would be for beginners. It is for children that are just learning to ride, where they would just kind of learn to go over small bridges, go around cones, go through, kind of a challenge to go through those rings, come back around. And at any point, let's say they were uncomfortable with right there with the S turn, then they would just be able to go around it and keep continuing. Also, thank you for your patience, we have in the middle of it where it gets a little bit more complicated for the bicyclists. These are people that are comfortable, but yet not comfortable yet to get into the pump track. I'd like to also notice that there is a potential plan to have a signage into the bike park to where we would see if there were any sponsors that would want to sponsor the pump track itself. The sign right there is just kind of what I just talked about. Also within that area, we'd have bicycle parking, and we would have the bike fix-it station with wrenches and air pumps for individuals that were getting ready to head out on the Setter bike path, or for individuals that were participating in the park itself. There will be 2 different playgrounds, typically a K through 12.
That's cool.
There'll be 2 playgrounds that we typically have in our parks. One for children 2 to 5 and then children 5 to 12. You can see the theme fairly well. Again, staying with the bicycle theme through design. Also in this park, we have inclusive spinners, which is the one on the left. We have this in 2 or 3 of our other parks. We have a climbing wall also, which is in the middle. And then we have a variety of swings, which would be inclusive as well. And then to the unique part of this as well is an exercise area. So since even really before COVID, we received a lot of requests to put components like this in our parks. The first one on the left is what's called a cross fitness ring. It facilitates 13 individuals who are exercising sit-ups, pull-ups, the old-fashioned monkey bars, a heavyweight ball. That individual is in the middle of flight right now trying to hit a target up on top. And then on the right side, you've got a cross-rig suspension training station. that's pretty self-explanatory. In fact, I've seen the mayor do this quite often in the last couple of months. We've also have the mayor. Also, we've had the ball lands. See that, let's see, right, hang on. Right there, see the bullseye? That's where they're trying to hit the ball. Now that ball, Mayor, could either be 2 pounds, 5 pounds, 10 pounds. Or no pounds. To your left there, you've got plyometric steps. And to the right, we have what is called just a challenge course. It has a called the Bamboo Challenge Course. But it is a challenge course that is, again, self-explanatory. This is typically where I get the question about fall safety, which all of our playgrounds have fall safety and enough FIBAR in there to be able to handle that. We will not put the city at too much risk. Keyword 2. We've also have our accessible hand cycle, which is there on the left, and parallel bars that, again, probably some of us have seen when we were in elementary school. Some of the features that we've seen in our other parks, we have a continuous walking path, but this one will be lit, as you see on the bottom left. We have a full basketball court. This, believe it or not, out of all the park amenities that we did surveys on back in 2017 with the Tierra Buena residents, the full court basketball court was number 1. We have a couple of disc golf buckets that will be spread out around the park as well for kind of beginning disc golf. And then, of course, you've got bathroom that I talked about that will be next to the parking lot. And open space for children just to freely play. Now, this is the part I got to get right. So, the not so fun stuff is that when we started this project back in 2019, we knew or we felt very strongly that we could keep it under $2 million. So if you add the grant and what the city matched it with, which we already have, it was at 1.6, and then we felt we could just keep it right around 2 million. However, with COVID, with the cost of materials and inflation, obviously, which I know everyone in this room understands what I'm getting ready to say, is that now we are looking at the potential cost coming in at 2.8 million. That is what Quadriga just gave us this estimate about 3 weeks ago. And so it is certainly over budget, potentially over budget. We haven't committed to anything. And so that is something that needs to be addressed. It is staff's desire to come before you after we go out to bid and before awarding a contract to come before you and give us the ability to figure out how to either value engineer it, which I learned that word just a couple of weeks ago as well, which means we're going to take things away, or give us an option to find additional funding. That pretty much says what I just talked about. Certainly alternatives would be to instruct staff to direct Quadriga to modify the plans and specifications. And of course, time schedules and funding sources, meaning the $800,000 from the grant could be impacted and probably would be impacted. And there is our staff's recommendation for council.
All right, thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Questions from the council?
Through the mayor?
Yes.
Mr. McIntyre,
I do not see one specific court in there.
One what?
Court,
There's a basketball court.
a different kind of court.
Oh, that court. No, you do not. Right now, I think we have met that need as it relates to pickleball courts. But we do also have a grant in play that we hope to hear back from That is part of San Brandon Park.
So that,
And lighting.
that wasn't on the survey in 2017?
Actually, it was not.
People didn't come up with that?
They did not.
Very surprised. So, I mean, the plan looks great. Where's the rest of the money coming from?
A lot of lemonade. We're not sure. We want the chance. This is kind of a fairly new problem. We certainly would like the ability to solve it.
So,
CMO.
through the mayor, as Mr. McIntyre points out, engineers' estimates, as we work with Diana and her team, we felt this was the best approach to actually get what the true cost of specs and plans are so that we can come back and create a plan either to get with the funding we have and build a park or figure out another way. But unfortunately, engineers' estimates are just that. And this approach here allows us the opportunity to get some true cost and be able to bring back some true facts and figures for the council to consider.
I mean, the design looks beautiful. It would be amazing for the community. The only, drawback is there's no pickleball courts, but I can live with that. Then the cost itself too, but the design of that, I think it really looks great. In a perfect world, would this be done in 10 years from now, or how?
In a perfect world, the timeline would be that we would have a contract in place by the end of this calendar year, that we would break ground by February or March and completed by the summer of 2022.
Wow, it's more aggressive than I thought. Thank you. That's good.
Through the mayor?
Yep.
So if this goes in, correct me if I'm wrong, this will be the only park in Yuba City with a full court basketball with a restroom.
That would be correct.
Thank you.
Does Blackburn Tally have full court basketball?
They do, but they don't have access to the bathrooms.
With the restroom part was the one.
So let me weigh in because I'll jump in here a little bit on the full court. There was a pretty strong reason why that happened way back then, and it had to do with some violence. And it was thought at the time that half-court basketball was less conducive to folks getting into altercations. So I think that's one issue that I know there's probably a pent-up need. I think everybody would prefer to play some full-court basketball, but I just think we need to pay attention to that. The other thing, the one comment that I've gotten on this park consistently, and it came up while we were out doing the cleanup, was if you put restrooms out there, you're going to make that attractive to folks that don't necessarily mingle well there, i.e., I'm going to speak bluntly, it could become an attractive place for folks who do not have a place to live, to hang out. So I know that was raised in this chambers by those folks when we first brought up the project. So whatever gets designed in those restrooms, I think obviously security is a big issue. And I remember coming up with Sam Brannon, there were some pretty expensive security thoughts. I think it was when we were doing the CDBG stuff. Just I think those are points to be concerned about as the plans continue to develop. But anyway.
I know the vice mayor was trying to dig in, sorry.
So through the mayor, I think, yes, that is obviously a concern. Part of the park that we've added is the lighting so that police, as they are driving by, which is a little bit different than San Brannon because the bathroom and the parking is pretty much right up front along Harder Park. So that was with the awareness that could be a problem. And the second thing is that there will be cameras installed in this project as well. But it is still a concern, and
Yeah, I think we heard the public comment from those in the neighborhood, and I just want to make sure that we continue to keep their thoughts in our mind as this thing moves forward. I think Vice Mayor, you had.
That was fine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions there. First of all, I appreciate your concept and design and the whole team because we don't want the same amenities at each park because we want to be able to specialize throughout the city and have people go. And we've got great pickleball courts that were just redone a few years ago, so those are great. My concern, getting to what the mayor said, making this attractive for those that are already in our parks. And how is the lighting going to affect this? Because we already have dawn to dusk at all of our others. Now we're going to have a park that is surrounded by lights. Is that going to run us into issues? And the concerns gets back to the restrooms and things of that nature. Do you have any thoughts on that at this point, or do we just need to have that as a point of concern going forward with how that's going to affect our ability to keep our parks clean and safe?
So I think the lighting is a good thing as far as, it gives the police the ability to see what's happening quickly as they are driving along Harder Parkway. I believe that probably here in the next budget year, I will be asking for additional funding for security for our parks. It doesn't mean that they will be a full-time security or will be a full-time staff member, but I need the ability to, and I'm currently utilizing it right now. We'll see how much it costs at the end of the year. But I am moving security around pretty much every week now, whether it's in certain parks where we have issues. And I anticipate this will be the story as well. But that is a common theme in all of our parks right now.
Okay. If I could just ask Mr. Mayor that maybe our city manager, we have a little follow-up with this just to make sure we're not going to open Pandora's box by having a lit park in the evenings. I get the security, but there's also secondary concerns that go with that. I appreciate the security, the cameras, but do we open up Pandora's box by having a lit park at night versus our parks are unlit for the most part now, and it's a dawn to dusk type of environment. We're supposed to be out of there in the evening. And then the other question I had is, we realize the overall cost has skyrocketed because of the supply chain. You put up the timeline of next spring, early summer. Have we any idea if that's really realistic at this point? Because you have a lot of equipment there. You have Ninja Warrior stuff, you've got bike paths, you've got basketball goals, playground equipment. Any idea if that's going to hold up the timeline on this park as well, potentially?
That's a great question. No, I do not have an answer to that part. I know that we could possibly phase the park in based on when the equipment comes in, but I would look to Ms. Langley to tell me that's a stupid idea or whatever. But so yeah, that is certainly a strong possibility right now, just based on everything else.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council, comments?
Brad, you explained that we have a budget shortfall on the projection of the cost of the park. Do we have enough in place to at least get the thing opened and then maybe add equipment incrementally as we get more funding?
Well, again, I don't know that answer until the bids come back. And then the concept is that, we're going to break those bids line item by line item, and then we'll see what we can provide. I'm hesitant to even give you an answer on that because I don't know.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Through the mayor, I do have to say that I'm often at Sam Brandon Park because that's where we have the pickleball courts, and they are in really awesome condition, yet there is a lot of need to fix the courts and better lighting, and the circumstances where that court lies right now, there is quite a bit of activity, and having security beyond what our policing service or fire does, I think is a really notable idea because being out there late at night with, 4 women or 8 women or whatever the number of teams, I'm usually out there maybe 2, 3 times, 4 times a week. So I see it firsthand, and I think it's really a smart idea for us to consider that and to try to find a way to budget for the security, because then that relieves the extra calls for policing or fire in these circumstances where security, we see noticeably the difference immediately, just having that security person at that park late at night, even when it's super dark and you're driving and you're trying to figure out if there's a person in the bathroom or something, it's kind of creepy and scary if you haven't been out there, where people can come out of that complete darkness into the area of the pickleball with the lighting, and it can be a little scary. So we've had a few situations out there, and Brad and our CM, Dave, and police and fire have been excellent in their response and services. But knowing, I'm concerned about the safety of community when they're out there wanting to just have a really good time. And I know that the pickleball courts are full every Saturday. If you get up at 7:30 on a Saturday, then you can go certainly see that they're full. But I love the idea of this park, and I would hope that maybe we consider finding ways to fund for security to make, have people feel much more safer while they're enjoying the park.
Anybody else? Comments from the public? Heather?
Surprised?
No.
Well, I'm Heather Esselman. I live at Lincoln Road in the city limits, just for the record, right? So I just wanted to point out, because there was a part of both of this presentation and another presentation you might have noticed, he kind of went through it pretty quickly, but if you look to the west of 99, there are 3 parks. When you look to the east of 99, there are multiple, it's just spotted full of parks. So even those parks on the west side, you have Regency, which is way at the top. You have Happy Park, which is way at the bottom. And in between there, the only park is the little Holly Tree Park, which is, most people wouldn't know unless they lived in that community that there was a park there. So we desperately need something in between all of that to fill up that space. Now, ideally, what you'd want to have is something within about a half a mile of where you live, whether it's a park or some sort of a recreational activity, whether it's a community center or something, so that you can show, you know, when you're trying to sell houses and things like that, the desirability for the city. So that whole area there is just completely not serviced, basically, for that need. And you were talking about lighting. I did notice in the municipal codes, because I was reading through them, that there are certain rules. Basically, the parks are supposed to be open from dusk till dawn unless you're doing certain types of activities. So you do have a way of, if there are people that aren't behaving and it's after and it's dark, you do have some way of being able to, you know, grab onto a code and say, you're not here, it's supposed to be here, this is an infraction. So I like the way that Mr. McIntyre is trying to approach this, because there's no way for us to know how much it's going to cost until we actually get those bids and those quotes in. And then you need to put everything in there, see how much it's going to cost, and then start picking out and saying, okay, well, do we need that much lighting? Maybe we can put off the bike thing and see if we can find a sponsor to help us pay for that type of situation, and those decisions can be made later. But unless you actually go out to bid and try to get those that information, you're not going to be able to get a good grasp onto what you can offer the public, and then let the public decide also. So if you need more pickleball, you know, that type of thing. But I believe what he was talking about, I participated back in 2017, I believe in that, and there was a desire for that full court of a basketball. And I think at that time, pickleball was relatively new, and we hadn't really even started. They didn't know it was going to be very popular. So things tend to take a little while, but I'm sure that in any future considerations, and I intend to come tomorrow because they're going to make some changes on the Planning Commission on the Lincoln plan, where we were promised, basically, if that had gone through, with 82 acres of parks and recreational activities, spaces. And since that's basically going to just kind of potentially be something that goes along the wayside, then we're lost all of that. And I think that's kind of sad. So I highly recommend that you consider going forward with this project, and we'll see what we can do as far as trying to find some funding. So, thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Anybody else? Not online.
No public comment.
All right, before I bring it to the council, a couple final comments from me. Number one, I think the fact that we're even talking about building a park is phenomenal, given everything that's going on, especially, given the times we're in. There's probably some things, and it probably sounds like, my goodness, we just beat the heck out of this park. I don't think that's the intent. I think it's exciting to try to get another park in town, to Heather's comments, and certainly up in that area is important. I will echo the funding part. We've now had at least a couple items on here, and funding continues to be an issue. And I think this is something that, as we continue to move forward as a council over the next budget cycle, et cetera, we better find the ability to pay or not to pay for some of these things. So with that being said, I'll bring this back to the council for potential action.
Through the mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving the plans and specifications for the new park development on Harder Parkway and authorizing advertisement for bids on the project.
All right, got a motion by Councilperson Kirchner, a second by Councilperson Harris. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, item 10 passes unanimously. We'll move to item number, thank you, Brad. Item number 11, 2020-2021 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, also known as the CAPER. Mr. Ben Moody.
All right. Good evening, council members of the public. So I'm before you with an item that's not quite as exciting. And really this is, in the staff report, it called it out. It's a requirement every year to do an annual performance evaluation and have a public hearing to give an opportunity for the public to comment on how we allocate and how we spend the funds through the CDBG program. And so I'll power through it. It's in the intent is, just as I stated, it tracks the city's progress. It's open to the public for comment and shows where we're at. And so with this year, one of the big things that changed for this year was we just lived through COVID, and still are, but that affected how some of the money has been spent. But we're making progress on it. With the program year 2021, there was an allocation of $666,000 and change. That was programmed through the CDBG program to these different groups, I guess you'd say. We put it through the administration, to the Sutter Yuba Homeless Consortium, and through these various programs to spend that money is how it was identified. And so to the right on the expenditure side, you can see where we're at. And I'd be happy to answer any of those questions on the specific amounts on it. The expenditure, or one of the big highlights up there is the administration. And so historically, what was going on with the administration amount is we were hitting the maximum, which is at 20%, and taking that off the top. But in reality, with the available staff and how we were charging ourselves for that administration, I never hit that amount. And so then we would go back through and allocate on the next budget cycle remaining funds. So I'd take the $50,000 off what we did with this cycle, and I expected to use about 70 at the end of the year. When we do a cleanup with the finance department, I took 50 off and we moved it over to our home program with Regional Housing Authority. And so that's a dollar amount that stands out. One of the other big ones that stands out is Maple Park Playground, which hits home to the last item, is that with the impacts with COVID, construction, and ordering the equipment, that's been delayed, but it's on track to be taken off the books in time. So how the funds that were used, 23 low-income disabled and senior households were assisted through Freed's home repair program, the housing rehabilitation, the rental units through the Regional Housing Authority. The money was authorized to rehab 7 sewer laterals along Garden Highway that were repaired. Through the Homeless Consortium and their partners, they aided 752 low-income persons through the various partners that they have with Bridges to Housing, Central Valley Homelessness, Hands to Hope, and Salvation Army. And then also through the county's Better Way, they helped approximately 54 people over this last year with those funds. Public facility improvements, we annually have been allocating funds for permanent infrastructure to aid the disabled, which also aids improving the city's ADA compliance around the city in those allocated census tracts, those areas that are determined to meet the funding need. And through this program, we put an advertisement in the paper and on the website and out to the world that we're open for public feedback and comment. And so one of the keys with this CAPER annually is that we have the public hearing with the city council and we have a review period. And so that review period's open right now and we've not received any comment. So with that, the recommendation is to conduct the public hearing and approve the CAPER and adopt a resolution authorizing staff to submit the necessary documents. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, before I open up the public hearing, any questions from the council? All right. Public hearing for the 2020-2021 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, the CAPER, is now open. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on this issue, please provide your statement via public comment. State your name and address for the record. Do you have anybody from the public that would like to speak on this? Anybody online?
No public comment.
All right. Hearing no further comment on this issue, I'm closing the public hearing, bring the matter back to the council. Council.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move the adoption of the resolution approving the 2021 CAPERS, authorizing staff to submit all necessary documents to the U.S. HUD.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilperson Espandola, second by Vice Mayor Shaw. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, item 11 passes unanimously. Item 12, Green Means Go program, nomination of green zones.
Okay, so this term, Green Means Go, has been thrown around a couple times with different support letters and has been brought up over the last couple of years with SACOG. And so I'll try to articulate the understanding of it the best I can, and definitely questions as I work through it, or please do. And so the state of California is providing funding for housing. And the state of California has set these air quality standards in California. And so they've set this threshold to improve our air quality and reduce our emission standard for one of these emissions by 19%, which is a huge number. And so in order to get to that number, there's a real push to basically intensify density of housing, reduce vehicle miles traveled, so bring more housing and development to the core, and to make vehicle trips electrified. And so, so the Green Means Go program was a SACOG pilot program. There was an effort, it's an effort by SACOG in the 6-county region to basically say, okay, we have this goal, we have this target that we have to hit in order to keep funding to come through. And what's, in order to help get to this need, how can we incentivize agencies to incentivize, but also help agencies get there? And so they know that there's huge funding coming through the state for housing and different grant programs to help assist this. So what they've come up with is this Green Means Go, and then these green zones. Am I saying that right? What are the? I'm gonna butcher the green zones. And so the green zones are these areas with the program guidelines to help establish that meet their needs for infill, reduce vehicle miles traveled, that the state in the SACOG want to incentivize development, because that's going to help reduce the air emissions and meet their goals. And so I'm butchering this, I know I am. And so you got this huge need for housing in our area. I think you saw the numbers, 11,000 homes a year. 7,000 of those homes, they want to be in infill areas, in that core. And so the thought is, how do we get people to, instead of building single-family homes at the far edges of the sphere, how do we bring that in and have them build in the center? And so that's the push for the state for this climate action plans, and that's where the funding is going to try to incentivize that. And so in order to get there and actually get some money when it comes through, is the city's working with SACOG, set up these green zones, and then that way we position ourselves for funding as it comes in, which then aids our housing needs, and it aids our infrastructure needs, and it aids that entices the infill. And so that's why we came up with these proposed green zones, and they're not the whole city-wide. Obviously, we would love to have aid housing everywhere within the city. But specifically why we came up with these two zones is based on the program requirements for this Green Means Go and what we think matches the city best too. So we call the redevelopment zone, which is what I kind of consider the center of town. It's this kind of based on the central city specific plan. It has some areas in there that we think have some redevelopment spots. It has existing infrastructure. And so that's what we've called the redevelopment zone. And then you have this promotion zone, which has more open space, but it's directly adjacent to infrastructure that we think is more ready to go. And not saying that there isn't spots out here or just on the edge that we didn't capture, but we couldn't call out the whole city. And so in these zones are flexible where we could change them, but they have to be approved by the city council. And so what I'm asking for tonight is to approve these green zones, and then we submit those to SACOG. Then that way the city is a participant in the Greens Mean Go program as they work through the state to lobby for financing to help meet these emissions and see what opportunities we have. So with that, I butchered it pretty bad. I'm looking for a recommendation to adopt a resolution to nominate the two proposed green zones for SACOG, help SACOG establish the program and meet Sacramento Region's greenhouse gas reduction goals. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moody. Questions from the council? A comment? Sure.
Ben, you butchered it. However, it's complicated. And believe me, being on that board, I've got to read and reread so many things. The intent being, we have to try to do our part to meet these GHG reductions. So SACOG came up with the program, Green Means Go, to help you, rather just throw the blanket over the entire city. If we can come up with specific areas that we can benefit from infill and reducing, vehicle miles traveled, all these buzzwords, they kind of blend together after a while. That's the intent. If we can do that, have a good program in place, get an area where actually show some benefit to our city, then we have an opportunity to get funding to infill. Regardless, is still a good thing. Reducing GHG is a good thing. Having people get out of their cars and on their bikes or their electric vehicles and get walking and whatnot to and from where they can live, work, and play, that's all a good thing. And if we can do that while doing our part as part of the region to reduce GHG, that's just all that much more better. So it takes a lot of work to identify these things. We'll see how well we do. But it's a good thing if we can get it off the ground regardless. But we can lay the groundwork, get some developers in there, put some infrastructure in there, hopefully, to, we're going to reduce blight. We're going to reduce some of these vacant lots laying around and collect trash and shopping carts and everything else. And it really is a win-win, but it does take some work, and this is one of the first steps. So much appreciate the work that went into this alone. Again, I know it's confusing, but we'll see how we do. So thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment.
Sorry, I'll try to make this quick. This is Heather Essman again. So in all these presentations, there's one key section that seems to be constantly kind of gone around. And the same thing with the emergency situation. But how is that going to fit into all of this? Because I know that SACOG looks and probably works a little bit with LAFCO together. And at some point, the idea, because that's within your sphere of influence, it's supposed to be potentially incorporated into the city. There's a lot of area in there that hasn't been developed, and it's right smack dab in the middle of town, basically. So I don't know if we're at some point getting to a situation where we're running out of not space, but we're supposed to have so many homes within this little area, and it might not actually fit. I don't know if that was even looked into, but if there's a way of us being able to say, can we kind of plan for the future and say that, and I don't know how people keep planning around it, but nobody ever seems to be talking about it because it is within the sphere of influence. So I was just kind of curious about that, but also I don't see any kind of incentives for electric vehicle, like charging stations or anything like that. I don't know if they've considered things with that or whether it's, or any other monies, but because it would be great if we could have some incentives for some businesses or some hotels in order for hotels to switch over. I have traveled a few times, and it's really helpful to have, if you're going to go to a hotel someplace, then to have it there at the hotel. And if the hotels that we have here, they're not new. So if they don't have those facilities, it might be a good way to kind of approach them and see if they would be considering that if they had some sort of incentive in order to get something like that. But until we have like some of these types of incentives, I don't know how much of an impact this is going to have. And I get it, you're just trying to fill because SACOG's saying, this is what we want to have, and we want to have green means go. But I don't know how much it's really going to help, and I'm hoping that the city itself is going to come up potentially with its own types of plans for some sort of a, whatever you want to call it. You don't have to call it a green revolution or something, but in general, thinking of technology and how technology is continuing, and a lot of car companies are switching over, that type of thing, so that the city itself has a concept, not just because SACOG says you have to have a concept, but that you have a concept that was kind of future-looking, and see if we can't improve just the city itself, not just because we're told to have a concept, but that somebody at the city is actually working on a concept. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
It does, except that's not the case. We're not being forced to do it. We're participating because they have the money. So we're gonna play to try to get some money to do exactly what you just said.
Yeah, and I would just add that there's a housing element that we just adopted that forecasts for the sphere and for the city limits, the housing expectations. Absolutely, that's why we're participating in this, because we're looking at the incentives down the road that help with the electric vehicles, that help with the infrastructure, and it ties into the city council's endeavors for housing with the reduction in development impact fees, underground policies, different elements that we've been working on for the aid housing and those various benefits for the city.
Anybody else from the public? Anybody online?
No public comment.
No public comment. All right, back to the council for action.
I just want to also add, Heather, the council, we have the reduced impact fees in certain infill areas, so we've already stepped in that direction on independently as well, just as a reminder. It's a good thing. Combine all that together, I think we can get some momentum going. And if there's nothing further, are we approving something?
You're adopting a resolution.
I move that we do so.
Second.
All right.
Did I get a second?
Second.
Okay. Have a motion by Councilperson Harris, second by Vice Mayor Shaw on item number 12. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, item 12 passes unanimously. We will move to item number 13, the 2021 School Crossing Improvements Project. These are plans and specs presented by Ms. Diana Langley.
You know, before I pass, I definitely want to thank Diana's team and William Jow for helping aid and coordinate the maps and working through the program with us. So it's, without his help and Diana's support, it helps us move in that direction.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the item before you tonight is the 2021 School Crossing Improvements Project. So in September 2020, staff submitted a grant application for the Feather River Air Quality Management District Blue Sky Grant Program, which is intended to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the city submitted a proposal for the 2021 school crossing improvements project and was awarded a $45,000 grant. So to come up with the scope of work for the project, staff reviewed the Safe Routes to School plan as well as the bicycle master plan and identified 2 locations around Park Avenue School. And so I'll go into a little bit more detail here with the map. And so you have, actually between the high school and Park Avenue School. So you have at Clark and Morton, the installation of 2 solar-powered rectangular rapid flashing beacons, upgrade of all of the curb ramps to be ADA compliant, and then striping improvements. And then also at Park Avenue in Clinton, upgrade the southwest and east curb ramps to be ADA compliant, install striping improvements adjacent to the intersection. Staff proposes to sole source purchase the rapid flashing beacons from Tapco of Brown Deer, Wisconsin, at a price of $7,994.93, including tax. The purpose for this is that then the contractor doesn't mark up the purchase of the equipment. Also, it allows us to maintain consistency amongst the other, we have rapid flashing beacons located at other crosswalks throughout the city, and then the sole source purchase is acceptable under our purchasing policy. With council's approval of the plans and specifications tonight, the schedule is to advertise for bids this month, open bids in October, award in late October, and then start construction early November with completion by the end of this year. The project estimate, which includes contingency, is $122,000. The grant amount is $45,000. So we have road funds and CDBG funds that we can put towards this project to make up the difference. And with that, the recommendation is that council adopt a resolution adopting a CEQA Class 1 categorical exemption, approving the plans and specs, and authorizing staff to bid the project. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions from council?
Through the mayor?
Yes.
Ms. Langley, just one question. I know that when we started looking at all the safe routes to school and everything, initially it was just Yuba City Unified, and we were going back and trying to look at the charters and the private schools because, you know, a stone's throw from Yuba City High School, you've got 1 or 2 charter schools, St. Isidore's private school. Did that data ever come in order to do this, or is that still, we're looking at the next time we do this, that data to come in?
That's still pending in terms of going to that next phase for the Safe Routes to School plan. We've had other projects that have taken a priority over that specific project, but it's still on the list of projects to be completed by staff to reach out to the charter schools and then also Sutter County schools within the city to make sure that we are going through that same process to identify improvements to facilitate pedestrian bicycle traffic to those locations as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Public comment? Online?
No public comment.
All right. Bring it back to the council for action.
Through the mayor?
Yes, sir.
I can make a motion to adopt a resolution adopting a CEQA Class A categorical exemption, approving the plans and specifications for the 2021 school crossing improvements project and authorizing advertisement for bids on the project.
Second.
All right. I have a motion by Councilperson Kirchner, second by Vice Mayor Shaw. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, item 13 passes unanimously. We will now move to item number 14, which is the Garden Highway Trunk Line Rehabilitation Phase 1 Project Award. Ms. Langley.
All right. So the Garden Highway Trunk Line Rehabilitation Project Award, in 2020, the city completed the wastewater master plan, which recommended the replacement of Techite reinforced plastic mortar pipe due to its high failure rate and substandard material. This project, Phase 1, is proposed to rehabilitate approximately 2,600 linear feet of pipe via cured-in-place pipe, which will require a large bypass system be installed because of the technology involved. The Phase 1 project proposes the rehabilitation of approximately 2,600 linear feet of pipe. However, there's approximately 8,830 feet of 36-inch and 42-inch Techite pipe to rehabilitate in total. So Phase 2 of this project at a future date will evaluate that 36-inch pipe that will be remaining. Due to Techite's pipe's brittleness, lining of the pipe is often used to extend the service life. The lining consists of a resin-saturated felt tube that is inserted into the pipe, and then either water or air is used to expand that tube. and then heated to allow the resin to cure on the felt, creating that structural pipe section to improve that structural integrity of the pipe. So in order to do that, you can't have sewage going through the pipe, which is why the bypass is required. So in July, City Council adopted the environmental categorical exemption and improved the plans and specs so that staff could bid the project. So the project scope is the 42-inch pipe from the intersection of Lincoln and Garden, all the way down Garden Highway to Burns Drive, and then along Burns Drive to almost the entrance of the wastewater treatment facility. So the project was advertised for bids beginning August 2nd, and bids were opened on September 2nd, in which we received 4 bids. You can see that the range of bids is $1.18 million, all the way up to $2.17 million, and the engineer's estimate was at 1.6, which is where we always want to be, is right in the middle. And so staff is recommending award to SAK Construction. Going back to SAK for a moment, as part of this process, the contractors had to submit information related to their experience. You don't want somebody that's never done this before to do this project, and so SAK met the requirements. So for the fiscal impact, the construction contract amount is just under $1.2 million. We're requesting a 20% construction contingency, which I'll go into in a moment as to why. $96,000 for construction management inspection, and then city administration of $23,715 for a total construction cost of just under $1.6 million. We have $5 million available in this capital improvement account. So with this, we'll be able to do some additional projects out of this account. So staff is requesting $231,000, which is 20% for construction contingency, and then $96,000 for construction management and inspection. And the reason for the 20% contingency is because of the this bypass system. It's going to be very complex. And so we want to make sure that we have contingency in there should the contractor need to make modifications that we weren't anticipating or they weren't anticipating, to be able to address that. As you can imagine, as you have this pipe bypass, you don't have the time to stop and let's contemplate for a few days. So we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of contingency. And then also in terms of the contract, the inspection and construction management, our current senior construction inspector is beyond busy right now between private development projects, because we have some new subdivisions under construction, as well as encroachment permits, and then also city projects. And so we are proposing to use Infrared Construction Management Group, ICM, who's currently doing the construction management on the wastewater treatment facility improvement project. So they're already in the vicinity. And we have a comfort level with them as well in terms of their ability to manage this project. And so as part of this, we're also recommending award of a contract to ICM. So with that, there's a long recommendation here, but basically we're requesting that council adopt a resolution awarding the contract to SAK Construction, and then also awarding a professional services agreement to Infrared Construction Management Group. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That has to win the award for the longest recommendation I've ever seen. Questions from the council? All right, public comment. Anybody online?
No public comment.
Okay, back to the council.
Through the mayor, I moved to adopt. Do I need to read the whole thing, city manager?
You can just say, I move to adopt the resolution.
I moved to adopt the resolution. Thank you.
All right, I have a motion by Councilperson Espandola, second by Councilperson Kirchner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 15, Selective Traffic Enforcement Grant to include DUI enforcement and education efforts. This will be by Lieutenant Slade. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, filling in for Sergeant Houck. The annual Selective Traffic Enforcement Grant, this year's dollar amount is $92,500. Within that dollar amount, we've asked for an additional mounted radar unit within one of our new patrol vehicles. And also we have a radar unit to be dispersed within the city. So at the cost of about $8,500. We currently have two. Those two are about 18 years old. So this will be in addition to, so we'll now have a total of 3 radar trailers. Outside of that, the majority of the monies are spent on overtime operations. A lot of the operations recently that were used during the COVID period were used for general traffic enforcement. Those general traffic enforcement operations we utilized most of them for street racing. So on Friday, Saturday nights, we did a lot of enforcement in the Kmart, Kohl's parking lot, all those areas, Butte House, Yuba College, all those areas. So we're hoping to utilize those funds for those things. Also, in that budget we're using a lot of some of the monies for train the trainers. So we're asking for a DRE expert for an instructor so we can do in-house training, and also for our standardized field sobrieties and A-RIDE. So we're sending officers to instructor courses so we can do our in-house training. Everybody knows with COVID, even though COVID has hit, we're still mandated by post to offer so many hours of training for our peace officers, and this will help us utilize that because we've been strained somewhat by post or some of the courses being pushed through college campuses, and a lot of them are requiring vaccination cards for our officers to attend the course. And if they don't have the vaccination card, they're not able to attend those courses. So it's made it somewhat difficult. So, and with that, like I said, there's no matching funds. So the alternatives is basically don't accept the grant. So my recommendations are to adopt a resolution authorizing the chief of police to accept the amount of $92,500 in the funding for the 21-22, the fiscal year for the grant runs on a federal fiscal year, which is October 1 to September 30th. And like I said, adopt a resolution to accept on behalf of the chief of police, and then also authorizing supplemental appropriation into the appropriate accounts for the 92.5.
All right, good stuff. Questions from the council before I open up the public hearing? Okay. Public hearing for the Selective Traffic Enforcement Grant is now open. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on this issue, please provide your statement via public comment. State your name and address for the record. Do we have any comments from the public on this item?
No public comment.
Okay. Hearing no further comment on this issue, I'm closing the public hearing, bringing the matter back to the council.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
Move to adopt a resolution authorizing the chief of police to accept 92.5 and grant funding for the 21-22 Selective Traffic Enforcement Program and approve expenditure recommendations and authorize a supplemental appropriation amount of 92.5 to account 100-43409, 2168-61430, 2168-62801, and 2168-63801.
All right, I have a motion by Vice Mayor Shaw, second by Councilperson Harris. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, item number 15 passes. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you very much.
Number 16, Police Sergeant's Memorandum of Understanding, City Manager Dave Vaughn.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Tonight before you, we have the Police Sergeant's MOU. As you'll recall, this is the last of the current open agreements. This agreement, like all others agreements, include a reopener language for the city to be reconsidering wages and those type of items in the April 2022 timeframe. This also includes a $4,000 signing bonus, and it also includes longevity pays at 5, 10, 15, and 20-year increments. Fiscal impact, an increase in cost of $81,700 for year 2021 to 22, and $126,500 cumulatively for FY 22-23. Recommendation, adopt a resolution approving a 2-year memorandum of understanding with police sergeants, authorize a supplemental appropriation for unallocated general funds for FY 21-22 in the amount of $36,500.
All right, questions for Mr. Vaughn? Seeing none. Any comment from the public? Seeing none. Any online?
Public comment.
Okay. Bring it back to the council for action on item 16.
The mayor move to approve.
Second.
Recommendations A and B.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilperson Harris, second by Vice Mayor Shaw on item 16. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, number 16 passes unanimously. Number 17, Youth Commission Ordinance Update. Mr. Vaughn.
Back to back. I feel like Mr. McIntyre here. Youth Commission Ordinance Update, as directed, staff went in to authorize an ordinance update, which acts, as you know, the Youth Commission acts as an advisory capacity to the City Council, City Manager, and Community Services Director in all matters pertaining to youth and all the general matters concerning issues affecting youth in our city and our community. Our Municipal Code 2-11 currently defines the Youth Commission as 9 members with 1 alternate. In order to increase the flexibility of the City Council to allow additional youth to participate, staff recommends amending the Municipal Code to allow for up to 3 alternates. Introduce an ordinance of the City of Yuba City, City Council of Yuba City, updating the Yuba City Municipal Code to allow for 3 alternate members for the Youth Commission by amending sections 2-1101 and 2-1102 of the Chapter 11 of Title II of the Yuba City Municipal Code and waiving the first reading.
All right, I would add a couple comments to this. First comment, number 1, is that I think anytime that we want, and then we have the opportunity to have youth and want to participate in any kind of city government thing, we should try to encourage it. And in this case, the Vice Mayor and I were very, very impressed with the applicant pool. And I know when former Mayor Harris and myself did it the prior year, it was the same way. And so I think that allowing for alternates serves 2 purposes. 1, local youth can get engaged. Number 2 is these folks travel in and out sometimes, and rather than have that particular commission short-staffed, if you will, it's nice to have some alternates on board so that we can they keep them going. You know, especially in a COVID environment, you know, the things that they've been able to do have been a bit limited. There's a lot of excitement by these folks in getting back and getting involved. So I hope you'll consider supporting this. But any questions for Mr. Vaughn?
What's the current, excuse me, through the mayor, what's the current number of alternates we have?
1.
1, so 1 to 3. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment? Online comment?
No public comment.
Okay. Back to the council for action.
Through the mayor, I recommend that we introduce the ordinance as described.
Second, yeah.
Okay, I've got a motion by
Do I have to?
Councilperson Espandola.
Sorry, Mayor.
He wants this one read, it sounds like.
Yes.
I have to read
if
it.
I may, just the ordinance, I'll read it for you if that's okay.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. It's to introduce an ordinance to the City Council of the City of Yuba City, updating the Yuba City Municipal Code to allow for 3 alternate members of the Youth Commission by amending sections 2-1101 and 2-1102 of Chapter 11 of Title II of the Yuba City Municipal Code and waive the first reading. Thank you. And there's a legal reason we read that, by the way.
Thank you for the read.
I can't remember who did the second.
Do it again. I think Dave.
It was,
Okay, Dave. Okay, so I have a motion by Councilperson Espandola, a second by Vice Mayor Shaw. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, item 17 passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Item number 18, public hearing number 1 to receive input from community regarding a district-based election system for the City Council. This will be also presented by Dave Vaughn, and we also will have another individual, Mr. Robert McIntyre from the National Demographics Corporation.
Good evening. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Mayor, Council, this evening. Tonight is the first public hearing in a series of public hearings required as the City Council considers moving to by-district elections. I know during your previous board meeting, you received a rather thorough briefing on the how and why, so we won't dig too deep into that. The purpose of tonight's meeting is really more about engaging the council and the community around the concepts of neighborhoods and communities of interest. So that way, when we move toward the second public hearing, which is also a pre-draft map training meeting, that the community starts to build a base of knowledge, and when we release the state demographic data for your neighborhood, your area, your city boundaries, that hopefully community members, if they're so inclined, will opt to propose maps for your consideration. And so with that, we're just going to walk through a little bit of the districting process. Now, this actually, the timeline came right out of your prior meeting notes from this, and so tonight we have the first public hearing. And just last night, we're talking like 5 minutes till midnight, the state released the demographic data for the statewide database. And so when I made this presentation, we still hadn't received it at 6 p.m. And so I had given up for the night and decided to spend some time with my kids. And lo and behold, what do you know, the state kept their promise at the very last minute. So we at National Demographics will be spending the next 3 to 4 weeks trying to get all of this data out to the 400 plus clients that we're currently working with to do this. And that's not to try to lower expectations too much, just to let you know that there's a big demand, and there are some agencies that have the requirement to complete this process a little sooner than yours does, and so they would be prioritized. And so with that in mind, you currently have the second public hearing scheduled for October 5th. I would propose, working through council and your city manager, that we look at maybe pushing that back to the following council meeting. And then similarly, that would push back any subsequent meeting. But just looking at the process as you had it defined in your last meeting, the second public hearing is also a pre-draft map hearing meeting. And it's really meant to train your community, because you as electeds are professionals in this kind of stuff, but the local community is not. They see this, at election time or at the decennial, like we're seeing now, and so it's an opportunity for them to get up to speed and learn the language that you've already likely mastered through your careers. So after the second draft map, or after the second pre-draft map meeting, we would release the data. We would release any mapping tools that the City Council would like to make available to the local community. And we would ask that if the community is going to submit maps, they need to do that in time for us to process those maps in time for the third draft map hearing. And so we have a date here according to your original schedule. Like I said, we're hoping all these can be pushed out one meeting date at least, in time for the third draft map hearing, presently scheduled for November 2nd. At this meeting, we would take all the submitted maps that were submitted at least a week earlier, by the 26th of October, according to the prior schedule, process them, make them available on your city's website, and then they would also be analyzed by us to say, okay, do these maps meet all the legal requirements, some of which we're going to talk about in just a couple slides here. Do they not? What are some of the criteria, or what are some of the factors that the people who submitted maps were considering? Because one of the things you often see when people submit maps is they just care about their part of town, or they have one particular issue they're trying to deal with. So they may not draw a legally compliant map that you could adopt, but they may have input for you to consider when you're looking at all of the maps before you adopt one, and that can be valuable as well. Then we would take direction. We would usually, the third meeting is probably the most vigorous public engagement part of this process, because there's something tangible to talk about, submitted maps. And so that provides an opportunity for the community to weigh in on all the maps that were submitted, but also for you to discuss what's before you, what you like, what you don't like, because in the end, you, the council, picked the map along with the sequencing. And so not uncommon, what we would see is if there was a lot of maps submitted, I would group them in ways that were logical and easy to follow. So you could, there maybe we'd be looking at 3 or 4 types of maps, even though there may be considerably more, if there is. And then we would talk through the pros and cons. You would hear the public weigh in, and then you might give me direction saying, Robert, NDC, we'd like to see you take these types of maps and make these sorts of adjustments and bring them back for the fourth meeting. The goal is to narrow these down, so by the fourth meeting, hopefully you have a level of comfort with selecting a map that you'd want to move forward with, along with the sequencing. that would be attached to that. And so that would be the goal by the end of public hearing number 4. You could, for example, narrow it down to one map at the end of 4 and say, bring it back for adoption with these minor tweaks. That can be done as well. But like I said, the goal is to start big and work our way down, hopefully. Now, here's the real purpose of tonight, of why you have to have these pre-draft meetings, is to help people understand some of the redistricting goals and rules around drawing maps. First, we have the federal laws. The federal law says that we must try to draw maps that have relatively equal population, total population. We're not talking adults, voters. We're talking total population within each district. And so our goal is to make those districts as close as possible in size as we can. Now, of course, I saw that there was plans for infill and development. That doesn't mean we have to make them perfectly equal. If you have a community development plan where you know certain part of town is going to be filling with residents soon, then you can underweight that area and overweight the other areas. But there are maximums we can do that. The difference between your highest population and your lowest population council districts can't exceed a 10% deviation from the mean. So, and we'll help you when we do the demographics on the maps that are submitted. We'll tell you how far they are off the mean and if they meet the legal requirements. So you won't have to divine that. We will be very explicit for you on that. We also have to make sure the 4 tenets of the Federal Voting Rights Act are being observed, and that there's no racial gerrymandering in the maps that are drawn. The California criteria for cities includes things that you might expect it to include. So for example, you'd want districts to be geographically contiguous when possible. You have a unique shaped community that can provide some challenges for that, but you want, to the extent that it's possible, you want to have geographically contiguous districts. You also want to keep neighborhoods and communities of interest together. And so what does that mean? It means you don't break apart one neighborhood to go grab other voters and then kind of have one of the, a finger going out to grab a specific group when you could have kept a neighborhood or community together. And so that is one of the state requirements. You also want to use easily identifiable boundaries. Now, to the extent you can, because we're constantly balancing population. And so you want to use major roads, highways, arteries, rivers, railroad tracks, obvious things that when somebody looks at and says, that would make a natural splitting point. But once again, we still have to go back to those federal laws and balance population. So you may use major arteries here in town for most of your dividing lines, but they'll come near the edges when we're doing population balancing. Very often where we'll see we're going down some smaller streets that may not be as obvious, but hopefully easy to follow for the voters in those areas. And then, of course, we want to draw districts that are compact. When you think of compact, think of like a perfect circle as the most compact you can draw a district. Now, obviously, when we draw census boundaries and we make our neighborhoods, we don't make them, those are more rectangulars and squares. So it's a little hard to get a perfect circle, but we don't want those fingers reaching out like we talked about. In the other case, we talked about excluding one, breaking up a neighborhood. Here we're talking about we don't want fingers reaching out. We want to grab chunks in a way that keeps it nice and compact. And then, of course, you cannot favor or discriminate against a political party. So you can't use the political affiliation. We don't look at past voting data within your area. So we look at who voted, but we don't look at who they voted for. It's not in our database that we're analyzing. And so we cannot discriminate for or against a political party. And then some of the other traditional redistricting principles that some jurisdictions choose to acknowledge is following the will, or at least acknowledging the will of the voters at the last election. Typically there are people who want to engage in this process because they're really interested in promoting democracy, or there's people who may have a reason to want to put every council member together in one seat, because it's easier to deal with that than mount a recall or run for office, so to speak. And so we just want to recognize that the electors or the citizens put you in office, and they should decide whether you come or go, not my pen, drawing a map. And so that is another consideration that as a council you can take in. And then, of course, I mentioned the future population growth, so long as we're not under or overpopulating areas that cause the balance to be more than 10% variance. So there's not a lot of people in the room, But I see that people are sending in electronically, and they're calling in, and they're sending emails. So this part becomes very relevant, because what we want to hear from your community is what are your neighborhoods? So what geographic areas do they consider to be their neighborhoods? And some examples of neighborhoods could include things like natural dividing lines, like highways or major roads, rivers, canals, areas around parks. You spend a lot of time talking about parks, and I'll bet the communities around those parks have an affinity for them, because clearly they're well maintained and taken care of, and you take a lot of pride in this community around those parks. And so, that could be another type of thing that defines a neighborhood. Other landmarks could be included as well. And so we do ask for some information from your public works that helps document some of this information. I was even taking notes to ask for your evacuation map as the way that you're currently dividing certain types of neighborhoods, or bringing together certain types of neighborhoods for the point of evacuations. That's just one thing to consider. But I'm hoping that through communication from the community, that you, the council, and it will get back to us, what your community considers to be their neighborhoods. And so that's one thing we're looking to hear about. So we can also, NDC, your demographer, can also draw you maps. Just in case nobody submits some, we want to make sure you have options to choose from and give us feedback on. The second area to look at is the communities of interest. Now first, let's talk about what communities of interest are not. They do not include relationships to political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. Those are not communities of interest. Really, communities of interest can be defined around just about anything other than political affiliation and race. So if there's a group of people who bought houses together and they went to the same high school or college, that's great. If they share, for example, a social or an economic interest, we'd want to know about that. One of the things we see in certain parts of the state, for example, is when there are senior centers. Often some of these senior centers, you think of those Del Webb communities, they're huge, and they have lots and lots of seniors. Well, those communities very often want to be split in two, so they feel like they have two council members who have to answer to them, because they want to have a strong voting bloc. And so, sometimes communities of interest want to be kept together to maximize their voting strength, or they may want to be split apart depending on how they feel like that would impact their ability to contribute to the democratic process. So we would also like to hear from your community around what they determine to be their communities of interest here in town, and that will help us also put together different district boundaries and do our best to keep those whole as best we can, while also balancing the equal population clause. And then, of course, if those communities would like to be kept whole or broken up, it's good for them to let us know that as well, because we wouldn't know unless they told us. And so we're hoping to hear back from your community if tonight, and whether it be electronically or at future meetings, what they consider to be their neighborhoods and communities of interest. And so with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for the presentation and the opportunity to ask questions from the council. Anybody?
Through the mayor?
Yeah.
So you mentioned that first of all, there's an interest in public participation on this, and these maps will be posted on the city's website. Will the addresses of the current city council be on that website?
So what we do is typically put the census block that the members live in, not the actual home address. And so a census block will have many, many houses, unless you just happen to live in a census block that only has one home in it. But typically, we would include the census block that each of the council members lives in.
So if I understand you correctly, I'm looking at a block.
Yes.
So the community will just assume that somewhere in that block, that's where one of us lives.
So typically we would highlight it and it would have the council member that lives in that block, but the block is not small. It wouldn't be like one city block. It's like a census block is multiple city blocks typically.
Okay, and second question, this process will be updated in 2030, the next census?
Every 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Sean? Good. Grace? All right, anybody from the public with a question? Anybody online with a question?
No public comment.
Okay. All right. Hold on. Hold on, I've got to do something here.
Public hearing.
I have to have a public hearing. So if you have a question, go for it.
Going back a couple of slides with your timeline, I just want to double check. You go one more, go to slide 3. Should that be November 16th, not December 16th on the 2nd? As you were rolling them down through there?
That would certainly make sense because it
Okay.
would be difficult to adopt your ordinance on December 7th otherwise.
Just wanted to make sure because December 16th is my anniversary and I will not be at a meeting. So I just wanted to make sure I read that, you know.
I'm sure your spouse will be happy to hear that you have your priorities straight.
Thank you.
All right. Public hearing number 1 regarding a district-based election system for the city council is now open. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on this issue, please provide your statement via public comment and state your name and address for the record. So once again, I will ask, is there anybody here that would like to speak? Is there anybody online?
Still no.
Okay. Hearing no further comment on this issue, I am closing the public hearing, bringing the matter back to the council.
Through the mayor,
Yes.
I like to make a motion we hold.
I don't know that we have action, do we, Shannon?
We don't have to take any action at this point, but I believe the city manager does have a comment.
Okay.
So through the mayor, we will take this information and promote it onto our website so folks know that we're doing this on a public basis, and we'll take the information that was provided and we'll ensure that we get it out to as much of the public as we possibly can.
Thank you, sir. All right. Moving on to item 19, future agenda items, opportunity to discuss with the city manager about items that came up in the meeting this evening that you would like to have brought back to the council at a later date. Is there anybody on the council that has an item that they would like to provide to the city manager? Okay. I have a note here just reminding folks that the cannabis presentation will be held at our regular council meeting on October 5th. Any other comments relating to the agenda items that may have come in during the meeting? Sierra, that's you.
No public comment.
Thank you very much. Reports and communications, we'll start off tonight with Councilmember Kirchner.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Only one commission to report on for the last 2 weeks, mosquito abatement. Usually when we talk about mosquitoes, we're talking about West Nile, and it looks like it's going on. It's on the rise, but not with, thankfully, no human cases. For some reason, Butte County is just off the chart right now as far as the numbers, including human contact. They lead the state, but for some reason, thankfully, we're on the other end of that. There was some activity out towards the Shanghai Bend area and north of Gray Avenue. There was some discussion about property that Mosquito Abatement owns, and as a point of reference, it's the property over by Dowers. We moved to set aside 2.2 million. Financial responsibility should it require EPA cleanup, and that is. There was some cases of COVID that they were struggling with, and they're just mitigating that like everybody else is, doing their best. Other than that, I participated the day before 9/11, a remembrance ceremony at River Bend. Councilmember Harris and I joined the faculty and the students in remembering 20 years of 9/11. From 9/11. Jeevan Baines, Principal Jeevan Baines was nice enough to include us in that. The next day, I participated in the Station 1 9/11 ceremony. Thank you, Chief, for putting that on, doing such a great job with that. I think most of us attended Chief Landon's retirement luncheon over at the church, Nazarene Church on George Washington. And once again, City Manager, thank you very much, and you and your staff for putting on the citywide cleanup. I think you guys and gals hit that out of the park. I was amazed by watching the organization and the amount of trash and shopping carts that was picked up. I was absolutely blown away, and hopefully we can do more of that, so we can show other communities what a real city looks like, and increase our quality of life. Lastly, once again, the city manager and I participated in the United Way Golden Wine Festival. It was a fundraiser out at Bishop's Pumpkin Patch. It was packed out. Probably one of the nicest days of the year. Great turnout. People supported a great cause. And that's it.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to attend the mayor's brunch, which was hosted by Mr. Mayor Boomgarden and the city. It was very enjoyable, very pleasant time. Also incorporated a quick tour of the Sutter Theater on Plymouth Street and all the modifications they've been doing over there. And we're looking forward to some really good times and events in the future for the community over there. So thank you for that. On 9/11, I attended a moment of silence in my neighborhood fire station, Station 7, out on Butte House Road, with a gentleman visited us from a former fire chief out of Butte County came down, as well as one police officer. So we had a good, respectful moment of silence for the tragedy and the victims of that tragedy, and then followed by maybe a couple cups of coffee and a lot of good conversation. So mission accomplished there. It was very, very nice. Let's see, also back that up with the ceremony at Riverbend School, as mentioned by Councilmember Kirchner. They're very organized, very structured, very good and respectful event put on by the principal, Baines out there. Very impressive. Regional housing, let's see here, excuse me. We received, the main thing we did in the last meeting, we received an annual independent auditor's report, and passed with flying colors and then some, really. It was a very robust and detailed approach to finances. Mr. Marco Cruz, the Chief Financial Officer at RHA, and his staff have done an excellent job, and no doubt will continue to do so. Really appreciate their efforts. SACOG, we had a workshop, about an hour long, on racial inequities in transportation, which is a very unique approach to transportation planning. We continue to have those discussions. It was an interesting presentation with some interesting perspectives and some assumptions, and however, remaining focusing on our purpose there, which should be a policy and direction and moving forward as far as a policy as we make decisions. We'll keep the conversation there, and it definitely is something that we do not want to even accidentally work into policies as we make decisions on where to put infrastructure. So I would recommend maybe perhaps folks watch that. It's recorded and online. SACOG's Youth Leadership Academy, they're accepting applications. I would humbly ask that maybe we consider offering the opportunity up to our members of our youth commission, the alternates, and perhaps even some of the folks who were not selected but yet deserve to have some type of opportunity. It would be really good. They ended their last program recently. I had an opportunity to speak via Zoom meeting with the folks that are from Yuba City on their SACOG's Youth Leadership Academy, and I tell you what, very impressive young people, not unlike the folks I'm sure you guys encountered during those interviews. So, any opportunity to help our youth, especially the ones that quote get it, I'm all for it. So if maybe we can raise that opportunity up for them, that'd be awesome. U.S. Auto Transit, we authorize an execution of a contract for upgraded, updated, and slightly modified security system at Yuba City Transit facilities, not just the one out on Highway 7 Marysville, but some park and rides and various other facilities throughout the region. And we will also be having a public hearing in conjunction with SACOG regarding the unmet transit needs in Yuba City area, get the feedback from our community to see what they feel we are lacking as far as their transportation needs are concerned. That will be online at 1 p.m. on November 9th. And thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next is Councilmember Espadola.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris, that's really cool about the leadership. It sounds like a nice project to invite our commissioners and others. So I attended the Bi-County Homeless JPA Government Affairs Committee, and Ben joined in on that meeting. It's usually a quarterly meeting, and mainly it was committees reporting on activities through the consortium and throughout the region. One of the things that, because there's been so many changes in leadership and government, we have a new CM, there's new CAOs. A lot of this work was done back in 2017, 2018, so I requested for the regional strategic plan to be shared out with all the elected folks and CMs and CAOs in order to help refresh the memory, because some of these decisions were made prior to even some of us being here on those on the planning and the MOUs and the work that we all agreed to do together. Also, we had the mayor, along with the CM, we had a homeless meeting with the county, which ties everything to our homeless task force with the city. The work of the citywide cleanup was part of that task force. It came through that committee, and that idea flourished through the community, the committee of people that work for the city. And so I was extremely impressed on how well organized it was, how quickly city employees volunteered to be part of it. And when we were, Officer Kowski and I were out talking to businesses, how receptive the businesses were. I was honestly expecting to get a lot of, my ear chewed on the homeless issues. And pleasantly, it was really the opposite. It was, how can we help? We want to help. And so thank you, Davon, and all of the committee members who helped pull all of this together, and Ben, your team, for putting that the strategies flyer together. Really helpful, useful. They really liked it, and they were posting it up in their offices. I saw that immediately, and so good work on that. So thank you, everyone, for really stepping up, and and our council, vice mayor and mayor, everyone. Doing, I didn't do the cleanup. I went around and talked to the businesses, but it was fun hanging out with Officer Kowski, because if you ever have an opportunity to go on a ride-along, I really suggest to go out with him. He's an amazing gentleman. His connections with the business owners, knowing the homeless population, and knowing how to really engage and find ways to have discussions on a really difficult topic. And when he was interacting with homeless community members, he did this, am I saying it incorrect? Kowski. Pardon me. Okay. I was on my roll, and you just, thank you. I was like, am I overtime or what? Anyhow, he does an amazing job. Very proud of his work. Participated, also attended the Regional Water Agency. The big topic, drought conditions. Very big concerns, and a lot of regional information was shared, and nomination for the vice chair for Aqua. I'm not going to get into the details of the politics of that, but it was a good meeting. Participated also in the Regional Water Advocacy Program, and we reviewed countless bills and discussed these bills, and no resolution at this point because things are still going through the governor for approval or non-approval of certain bills. Then attended the League of City Revenue Taxation Committee. That was a long, deep conversation about, because I think most of you are going to be attending the League of City Conference this week. The The annual conference, there's a resolution number 1, so keep an eye for that. Mayor and Vice Mayor, the request, it was passed through the committee, meaning that in that resolution, there's a request for the legislator to work with Cal cities to pass legislation that provides for a fair and equitable distribution of the Bradley-Burns 1% local tax from in-state online purchases. The opposition, there's few cities that were opposing, and we all received emails, I think, and our city manager forwarded some of that. In particular, for large companies, one of the large companies that was discussed is Amazon Company, because they're establishing these fulfillment centers, and they're designing the ways to be able to not be considered the online shopping, but locally, so taxes end up staying in the community where these fulfillment centers are, if this was to not pass. And so at this point, we want to keep it where the purchase is done and where when I buy my items, when they come to me, the taxes come to Yuba City. That 1% comes to Yuba City. Otherwise, I think there's like 13 or 14 locations of these fulfillment centers in California. So quite a lengthy discussion on that. I also had the opportunity to participate in the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Thank you, Chief Alexander, for your team and everyone putting that together. Much appreciated, and for the work of everyone in the service of that time. I also had the opportunity to speak in front of the American Association of University of Women last Saturday. It was their first time getting together in person since almost 2019, so it was a great opportunity to reconnect with many women in our community. And I attended Chief Landon's retirement, as many others. What a beautiful honor and celebration to him. And then this afternoon, our new chief, Baker. I want to end with a memory of a family member that passed away a year ago, close to a year ago on September 24th. My cousin, Sergio Espindola, died from COVID. I think I shared that story a year ago, and so the 24th of this month will be his 1-year anniversary. And, people have different opinions about vaccines or not vaccines, mask or no mask. At that time, the vaccine was not available, so I think Sergio would have taken the vaccine if he would have had access to it, but, things were so different then, even a year ago. And all I can say is that I share with you my experience, and I share that folks should have the vaccine in order to be protected for themselves and for others. It frightens and it scares me to see young children being put in situations where it could harm their life for a long, long time if they're not vaccinated or taken care of. I end with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since our last meeting, the GSAC, the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, held its regularly scheduled meeting. Want to remind, as I reported out of the retreat, that the actual $100 million lending fund has been established for the low-income housing projects, for the infrastructure, so that is available. Ongoing discussions with GSEC. I've talked with the city manager and the mayor. Want to get us together so that there's more comprehensive understanding of how we fit into GSEC as a city. There's some great opportunities in that, so I look forward to that meeting coming up. Also, one other thing, and I'll go ahead and let you know this, is we pay a membership fee every year to GSEC, and it's about $24,000, $26,000 a year to be a member of that. That is a drop in the bucket compared to what the major corporations from the private sector put in. they commit to $500,000, $100,000 a year over 5 years to be a part of that. And some of the discussions we talked about at the retreat is it is the goal of GSEC in the future here to not require a monetary contribution from the municipalities. That's the goal they're heading for. So, I strongly recommend we stay a part of this. There's great opportunities, and that is what their goal is. So I wanted my fellow council members to know that. Transit, thank you, Mr. Harris, for updating us on the security cameras and stuff, because as Keith put, our systems that were there were the old 780p, really grainy, and we might be able to tell what happened if it was very slow motion, but we got new stuff coming to help everyone feel safe. The bigger topic that apparently I missed the meeting before, but it resurfaced, was the tree. And there's apparently a protected tree, but the new site out in Linda actually was supposed to start this week, clearing the grounds, but also protecting the endangered tree, and I forget what type it was. Elderberry, thank you. One elderberry tree that they're going to make sure stays safe during this process. The RWMA did not meet this past month as we have no further business to go forward because the new JPA will be coming forward to all the municipalities. I encourage my fellow council members, talk to our city manager. It has already been vetted by all municipalities, by our CM and our attorney. That will be coming before us early October, and they are hoping to have it accepted by all jurisdictions by mid-October so that will move it forward on the timeline. So I encourage you, if you have any questions concerning that, please meet with the city manager, get your questions answered ahead of time, as we'll be getting a presentation. I believe the first meeting in October is when it's slated to come forward. Things that I have attended, like many of you, 9/11 was very sobering, and the 20-year anniversary is very sobering. And I want to, the whole week started with an event the mayor and I was out at Calvary Christian Center, very moving there, all the way through. Chief, excellent job by fire, the color guard, incredible, very honoring. What you guys did that morning, and then to the ceremony later that day. And all I remember is the acronyms, and it doesn't sound like what it means, but Fool's Fraternal Order of Leatherheads, something like that. Anyway, whatever, they did an excellent job. And a big shout out to Battalion Chief Hankins, because I know he's the president of that. It was quite moving to see everybody over at the museum, and top notch. I really do appreciate that. Miss Langley, your entire crew for the cleanup. Day that we did, it was great. We always, we see fire, we see PD and this and that. Public Works, man, they stepped up to the task, and they had the right equipment for the job. If they needed something, went back to the corp yard, got it, and we made a dent in the city. And big shout out to you and your team. Thank you so much. They did a heck of a good job, and can't say thank you enough. Looking forward to the next one. So, Chief Landon, congratulations on your retirement. That actually is just a few days out. I know we've had the changing of the guard, but Chief is still with us. We have two chiefs right now, and Chief Landon, wish you the best. Thank you for your many years of service, and you are truly going to be missed at this city. And then the last thing I attended was it was the Marysville Stampede this past week. I want to thank Public Works again, because they were right behind us on Wednesday cleaning up our mess, because we ran 40 head of cattle through town, through the medians, through some levees, but we got them across and where they needed to be. And I turned around and looked, and here comes our street sweeper right behind us. So there was no evidence left. But what's significant about that is when you look at the Stampede, that's our heritage in the West. The West was a Wild West, and rodeo is like one of the oldest sports around. and we had world champions here. Thank you to Flying U and the Rosser family. We have a legend in Cotton Rosser and his family right here in our community. They give back, and just at the rodeo itself, they had our Canine Association there doing fundraising. But not only that, we had the Give a Key Foundation, which is part of Yuba City, raising money for breast cancer awareness. So it's a huge community event. I want to just give a huge shout out to our city for allowing it to go on and go through the city. Thank you, Public Works, for cleaning up our mess. And then to the Rosser family, the Give a Key family, for the opportunities that they present. So thank you all. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Okay, I got a few things. Mayor's Brunch, it was mentioned, this was the first time we were able to bring the mayors together since 2008. And really the impetus behind that was these are the folks that paved the way for some of the stuff that we do. It was worthy to recognize them, interact with them, bring back a tradition. And so it was a good afternoon. Thank you to city staff for all the work you all did in helping to put that on. And I look forward to hopefully that kind of a tradition can continue in the future. LAFCO, let me speak about the LAFCO meeting. I'm ringing the bell. The fire chief and the city manager participated in this meeting. There's a grand jury report out there about Sutter County Fire Department. And many people say, well, why do you care, Yuba City? You got your own municipal fire department, very professional, well-staffed. Well, the reason is because we're very regionalized here in our area. We all rely on each other. And if there's one fire department that's struggling, we're all potentially impacted by that. We share resources with Sutter County. We give them help. They give us help. Some of it's call when needed. Other times it's automatic. And so it's really something we need to pay attention to because if they can't solve their problem of staffing and equipment, it has a direct impact, and it's this way. One is we could spend a few more times out there taking care of their stuff, and I think Chief Alexander would absolutely agree here is we're a busy department here in Yuba City with 70,000 people, really busy fire department. And we don't always have the resources to share. So, and we rely on Marysville, and we rely on Live Oak, and we rely on Sutter, and we rely on Oswald Tudor, and we rely on all of our neighbors. So anyway, this grand jury thing, I may not agree with everything that's in the report, but it is ringing the bell, and it does bear something. I have confidence in the leadership from our Sutter County supervisors, but it's an issue that really needs some attention. We're talking about emergency preparedness. And guess who sits with us in regional emergency operations centers? That would be Sutter County as well. So enough about that. COVID calls, listen to Dr. Lou every other week, and we get the briefings. We'll have one this Friday. It'd be interesting to see what the trends are here locally. Councilwoman Espindola talked about the homeless meeting. Really a good meeting with county supervisors, the city manager, the county administrator, really trying to focus on a couple things that we can really do together. We talk a lot about getting stuff done, but really, okay, what can we tackle? What can we really do? And there's some things coming on our horizon. We've all seen the Project Home Key and do we expand Better Way or what have you. But it was really about making sure that when we find folks who are struggling with homelessness, that there's a place for them to go. And when we find folks who are not necessarily the best citizens, is that we have an avenue to take care of that as well. And we have a fair amount of that going on. And we found that when we did the cleanup, okay? So anyway, I was encouraged, and I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate the participation from the city manager. As for the cleanup, Vice Mayor stole my thunder. I got a chance to ride with Tim Bybee and hang out with some of that crew, and the Vice Mayor is entirely correct. I obviously have a connection to the fire department, so I spend some time with those folks and the PD as well. This was probably the first time I got to ride in a sewer guy's pickup truck, and he invited me to go do it again, and I will. It's good people, and everybody, top to bottom, Samantha Benzel's picking up needles and city staff safely. Yeah, I mean, it was a good day, and it was a really good feel-good event. 9/11 ceremony, obviously near and dear to my heart. 20 years ago, we got that thing started at the PD. You've carried it forward, really meaningful. I really appreciate that. I'm a member of the Trauma Intervention Program Board of Directors now. I would note that Lou Benninger is no longer affiliated with Trauma Intervention. Lisa Amaro Helmer is now the CEO. We have a new board as well, looking to continue to carry on the very good work that TIP does in the community. Rob Landon, just such a consummate professional. Had the opportunity to work alongside him, had the opportunity to witness the time that I was away and back in the city. I have the good fortune of bringing him on 93Q with me tomorrow. So if you're listening, it'll be a good little send-off for Rob. Brian Baker, I have a tremendous amount of confidence in Brian coming forward. Police department, I mentioned it today at the ceremony. Anybody who engages in that line of work in this day and age, I think has my utmost respect. And anybody who's in leadership positions, that includes you, also has my utmost respect. It's just a profession, I think, that's in some cases really under scrutiny, and they take care of us, and these are the men and women that allow us to go to sleep at night without having to worry too much anyway about anything happening. I want to take a quick mention of the Mayor's Leadership Institute. There was a piece on that. I would hope as people come into the council chambers, I've witnessed this over my professional career here and now as a council person, they're just unaware, and it's not their fault, but they just don't know what's really going on. And this is an opportunity for those folks who want to learn more about how the city of Yuba City operates, is to participate in these things. This is where you can get, okay, what are we doing with bike paths and electric stuff for charging and everything? Because those activities are going on. We've got a fantastic staff that is, I think, in the front row. And so I encourage anyone who has questions about how the city operates to take advantage of the Mayor's Leadership Institute. Almost done here. The rodeo. I talked with, and Vice Mayor really hit it on the head. I mean, this is a gem, a local gem. 87? 87 years this thing's been going on, and people, it's a Yuba County and it's a Marysville thing. No, it's not. It's a regional and it's a community thing. If you look at the people who are participating, there's Yuba City participants in this. There are Yuba City people participating as sponsors. There's Yuba City businesses contributing. They had the Yuba Sutter Canine Association. So I've asked the city manager if we could please consider recognizing both Cotton Rosser and Reno Rosser for their contributions to the community, especially Cotton, of course, who's a living legend, but Reno as well, and Nicole for that matter. And though they're doing something in the community that not only is entertainment, but it's really charitable and giving back as well. So in the next few weeks, I hope to have Cotton in here, and hope to have Reno in here, and hope to have Nicole in here, and we can recognize their contributions to the community. Tonight, I'd like to close in memory of Francis Silva. I think most of us certainly had come across Francis, and so he's Mr. Levy, to me anyway, Levy District 1. Francis passed away, he's 99 years old, and I can still remember him even here recently attending meetings. I think he was in Sabufka still, right? I mean, he was attending meetings in 99. And so, if you look at the levies and you look at the fact that our levies have improved over time, you can certainly hook Francis Silva into that realm of those folks who took care of and dedicated a lot of energy and time and life to making us all safe. That being said, we'll close the September 21, 2021 City Council meeting. There we go.